The taxi driver who loved me. Hi, today I will tell you a story that taught me a lot of lessons. The most important one was that sometimes what may seem true is not true, and we shouldn't be so fast into thinking assumptions about people. My name is Carol. I am 16 years old. I live far away from my parents. Because of my school, I live alone in a small apartment. Well, not really alone because I have a cat with me and her name is Sam, and she means the world to me. We do everything together and go to every place together. She is my family here when I am feeling down. I play with her and all the sadness just simply fades away, and it's like she's an antidepressant to me. I don't make many friends, and it's really difficult being alone. My parents knew that, therefore they gave Sam to me as a gift. It took me some time to adjust to the new place, but I got used to it. There is this taxi driver who is a lot older than me. He also lives somewhere near my house, and he usually drives around the area. And the thing that I wanted to tell you about him is that he is in love with me. Well, at least that's what I used to believe. He is a really nice person. I had seen him a couple of times in the street and after school. We talked for a while and I realized that he is in love with me. He is always so nice to me, and sometimes too nice. It made me a bit suspicious about him and his intentions. Being a girl of my age who lives alone, I was a bit careful about these things. I had been in his taxi several times and nothing wrong happened. One day I went to the market to buy some cat food for Sam and some things for my apartment. I took Sam with me because I never leave her alone. I took the bus to get to the market because it was really far away from my house. When I got to the market, I bought cat food and other household accessories that I needed, and after shopping for a while, I got really tired and thought, I might eat something because my house is very far away from the market. It would take a lot of time to get there, so I looked for a restaurant and had a meal there. I was so busy shopping and doing other things that I completely forgot that it's gotten so late, so I went to the bus stop. After that, unfortunately, I just missed the bus by a minute. The next bus was going to come in an hour. I waited at the bus station for almost half an hour with my cat, and still half an hour was left. The time was moving so slowly. Seconds seemed like hours. There were some passengers waiting at the bus stop. One of them told me that sometimes the next bus takes about 2 hours to get at the stop. And that got me really worried because the sun had almost set. There was no sign of the bus, and after some time, a taxi stopped in front of me. When the window got rolled down, it was the same man about whom I was telling you guys about. He told me that he had completed his shift and was heading home, and coincidentally, he saw me at the bus stop since his home was near mine. He suggested me to get into the car with him and he would drop me off at my home. I got really worried about what to do because it was getting so late and still no sign of the bus, and I was afraid that he might do something to me. After thinking for a while, I decided to get into the car with him. I got in the back seat and he started the car. It was a long journey in front of us, so he started to ask questions about me and we started talking. During our conversation, he was being a bit flirty and was staring at me the whole time from the back of the mirror of the car. Honestly, guys, I was a bit scared too. But I had Sam with me, so I overcame the fear and tried my best not to let him know that I was scared. By looks, he looked like a decent man. Something wrong wasn't expected from him, but still my mind was creating different situations about what could go wrong. And guys, there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong in that ride. We were halfway into our journey that he suddenly stopped the car and looked at me. Imprecise, he was looking at my breasts. Then he bent his neck and he tried to grab my chest. Well, at least that's what I thought he was doing. But that didn't happen. I had Sam in my hands. At that moment, I had no idea what to do. I was in severe shock at the moment, so I closed my eyes. But turns out he was picking up Sam, and I thought he was going for my breast. I got really shocked and frightened at that moment, and he realized that. He felt so guilty and apologized to me for grabbing Sam like this. But then he explained why he did that. When he was young, he had a cat just like Sam. He showed me her pic, and the resemblance between his cat and my cat were uncanny. He told me that he loved her so much and told me all the stories about his cat and all the adventures him and his cat had. I asked him where his cat was now and what happened to his cat. This question brought a huge deal of sorrow on his face, which gave me the answer to my question. Then he told me that once he was going someplace and he had a really big accident. The cat was with him in the accident, and unfortunately, the cat couldn't make it out alive from the accident. He was also really injured, but he was more sad about the loss of his cat than his own injury. I got so sad after hearing all this because I couldn't even imagine what I would do if something like this would happen to Sam, because she is my everything, my whole world. After that, we talked for the rest of our journey, and we became good friends too. Though I love Sam a lot, I told him that he could play with her for some time if he wants to, because I had an idea of the pain from which he was going through. He told me that it's a really nice gesture from my side, but he couldn't take Sam away from me. He said he didn't want me to go through what he went through when he lost his cat. We didn't realize in our talking that we had reached home. I wanted to talk to him more, but I guess that was it. He dropped me off at my apartment. I offered to pay for the journey, but he didn't take a single penny. I even tried forcefully to give him the money, but he didn't take it. So I thanked him a lot and went inside my apartment. He also went to his house after that. When I was about to sleep, I realized that he was only looking at my cat and he was only being nice because he was a nice person. He didn't have any wrong intention. At that moment, I reflected upon how wrong I was and was really feeling ashamed for thinking this wrong about such a nice person. I wanted to tell him all this and what I thought about him and how wrong I was. I really wanted to apologize to him many times, but never got the courage to do so. We humans are really fast in judging people. We all are. We start making up assumptions about a person, that what type of person he or she is, and we stick with false assumptions, but when we realize that our assumptions are wrong, we are all left with nothing but guilt. That day, I learned an important lesson that is going to stick with me forever, which is we should never be so fast into making assumptions about people. We have to at least give them a chance to explain themselves. If you like my story, kindly like this video and tell me in the comment section what you think I should have done. Should I have told him, or not telling him was a good decision? Also, share any similar experience if something like this happened to you. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.
As you already know through the first part of my story, my name is Carol, and just like every other girl my age would easily misinterpret and suspect kind gestures from male folks out there, it was somehow normal for me to suspect a taxi driver that showed me so much love. As a matter of fact, you can't really blame me. After numerous sexual assault attempts I've suffered from old people that are even related to me, I have grown up to suspect every male folk out there, especially in today's world. It seems nothing goes for nothing. Indeed, every act of kindness is suspicious. However, these reasons didn't in any way make me feel better. I still felt I owed the man an apology. Unfortunately, unlike other days, it was a little bit difficult to come across the taxi driver. Subconsciously, I was eager to see him again. Well, in one of the evenings after a stressful day at school, I decided to go out for a walk, and boom, we met. Actually, I couldn't really hide the excitement. It was too obvious judging from the way I reacted when he got out of the car and extended his hand for a handshake. I held on firmly to the hands and smiled back. After exchanging pleasantries, the first thing he said was that he bought a cat that's very similar to the one he lost in that fatal accident back then. He described how adorable the cat is and how much he wants me to see her for myself. Personally, I was happy for him. At least this new cat would help him get over the loss of the previous one. As funny as it might sound, I realized that all the while we were still holding hands, and he was gently caressing my palm in the process. I didn't want to make the mistake of misinterpreting his intentions once again, so I overlooked it. After telling me more about his new cat, he softly invited me to visit his place and see the cat for myself. I accepted with the condition that it would only be possible during the weekend or any day I'm less busy at school. Since I didn't have much to do in school that week, one of these days I later decided to pay the taxi driver a surprise visit. I got into his apartment, since the door was open, and I saw the cat lying down on the sofa. Just like he described her, she was the perfect beauty, and I couldn't help but play with the cat's fur. It was soft and awesome. The cat, on the other hand, was staring at me with this confused face, and I couldn't help but smile back at her while whispering my name to her. After a few minutes, the taxi driver came in from the next room to meet us, having our inaudible conversation, and burst into a loud laughter. In no time, he jumped on the sofa and was struggling to gain the cat's attention, but it was as if the cat already fell in love with me. She fixed her gaze on me and kept meowing in a sweet manner whenever I made a statement, as if she was also giving me replies. Before I knew what was happening, I've spent hours playing with the cat and the taxi driver, and it was already too late for me to go back home. The taxi driver noticed that I was nervous, so he promised that he'd drop me at home and that I should not worry. Although I'm someone that does not like disturbing or stressing another person too much, I had no choice but to allow him to take me home, considering how unsafe it was to go alone. In a flash, the taxi driver was already in his bedroom to wear his clothes and also pick the car key. In no time, we started the trip, and this time around, it was not really a boring journey compared to the previous ones I had. The truth is that by now, he had already gained my trust through his actions. So we were more like friends now. He told me a lot about himself, and I felt I'd be considered boring if I didn't also contribute to the list. I had to tell him how my parents never once allowed me to eat ice cream since, according to them, I'd get cough from cold. We laughed at the misconception about ice creams I grew up with. It was funny because ice cream is like every child's favorite food, whereas I never had the opportunity to taste it once. From the ice cream discussion, we started talking about school life during his days and how it is now. I noticed that the taxi driver slowed down and then branched into a parking space before stopping. On the left side of the road, I observed that the place was a market, and deep inside, I kept wondering why he stopped. I guess he also noticed that I was uneasy and decided to break the silence by saying, "Please, I want to get something from the market. I'll be right back." And then he winked at me. His winking was so bad it got me cracking up with laughter. In split seconds, the taxi driver was already back in the car, and somehow I was unsure if he was able to get whatever he went in to buy. With hands on his back, he said he had a gift for me, and that I should promise him that I won't reject it. I began to imagine what could possibly be in the gift he got for me. Sluggishly, I nodded in affirmation that I won't reject it. Well, even after agreeing to collect the gift, he still didn't allow me to see what was inside the bag. He stepped into the car and we continued our journey, but in silence. After some time, he stopped the car and came to the back seat where I'd been sitting all along, and then opened the bag slowly. Right inside, the surprise he got for me. A big, creamy, mouth-watering ice cream. As a matter of fact, it was really the best surprise I could get. I watched the ice cream, fascinated, and it actually made me realize that dreams do come true. I couldn't even wait for him to hand it over to me. It was hard to resist the urge of hurriedly dragging the parcel from his hands. He smiled as he watched me eat the ice cream with all amount of seriousness. Since the car was already too hot, the ice cream started melting and I had to eat it faster and rapidly. With the way I was devouring the ice cream, the taxi driver had to promise me that he'd get me more next time. He turned over to the driver's seat and we continued the trip. All of a sudden, we heard a sudden bursting sound and he held the brake. After careful observation, he noticed that one of the tires actually picked up a sharp object and got deflated. It was actually frustrating because the whole unfortunate scenario happened in the middle of the road. Since the taxi driver is always going around with most of the repair equipment in the car, he got out and in no time was able to fix the tire issue with the spare he had. Well, although he tried repairing it, the car still needed the services of a professional. They had no choice but to manage. After adjusting the tire for some time, he started pumping air into the fixed one. This made a little disgusting noise, and I had to close my ears until it was over. Immediately, he was done. We continued our journey again, but before we could get to my apartment, we noticed that the taxi driver's cat that was with us all through the time we spent together was nowhere to be found. Our fear was that maybe we left her where the car crashed, and so I decided to join him in search of the cat. We got to where the car crashed earlier on, and we looked all around, but we found nothing. We got so disturbed and even had to enter the nearby woods, but our search was still futile. Then and there a thought came into my head, and I had to tell the taxi driver that maybe the cat had returned home to the house after they left her in the street. After saying that, we entered the car and headed back to the taxi driver's house to check if the cat was there. Luckily enough for us, at arrival, we saw the cat crying in the house. We both embraced her and kind of tried explaining how much we have looked for her. She stopped crying and kept rubbing her fur gently on us. By now it was already too late, and considering the condition of the car, I didn't want the taxi driver to risk anything just to drop me off, so I just asked him if I could sleep over that night at his place. Actually, I had so much confidence that nothing will go wrong, like I expected, and he agreed and said I could sleep with him and the cat together in the bed if I wanted to. The suggestion was okay with me, but I told him I had to take my bath first since the day's stress actually got me sweating profusely. He showed me his bathroom and I took my bath but had to wear the same clothes I wore before. I came back and laid down on the bed with him, and just a few minutes after we started discussing again, we suddenly heard a knock on the door. And since it was late in the night, we were both worried and scared. The first thought that came to my mind was if it was actually armed robbers. I was literally shaking in the bed. The taxi driver summoned up courage and opened the door, and right there were 2 policemen and my parents with them. According to them, they'd been looking for me all day. I was so happy that my parents came to pick me up, but why they had come with the cops was something I didn't understand. The cops took the taxi driver, handcuffed him, and he was prosecuted and sent to jail. The cops thought that he actually did something bad to me, but I told them he was a good man and he had never done anything bad to me, but they didn't really believe anything I said. One of the cops kept saying that maybe the man had threatened me not to reveal the truth. He told my father that the taxi driver had done similar things in the past. Well, I don't really know how true that might be. All I knew was that he never hurt me in any way. After the taxi driver was sent to jail, I decided to take care of his cat and mine. I'm sure that's the least help I could render to him. But even with that, I'm still confused. I don't know what to do. Can I go to visit him in prison? I'm sure he'd be happy to see me, but I don't know if my parents would want me to do that. Or maybe I should just let things be, and after serving his jail time, he'll be released and I can hand over his cat to him and apologize for what he's gone through because of me. Please help me by commenting on how I should act now, because I don't know what to do next. You can also like the video and subscribe to our channel.
Like a bolt from the blues, it has happened. That the taxi driver who I was beginning to get fond of is no longer with me. I was not myself by the passing of each day. Oh my God! Examination was by the corner, and it seems as if I don't give a damn. I couldn't just help it because every one of my thoughts was tailored toward the good moments I had with the taxi driver to the moment he was taken away from me. The more the days went by, the more scared I became. I was torn between two worlds, one filled with everything I could ever dream of, love, value, passion. The other, forbidden love, punctuated by dangerous choices. Finally, one day, I decided to visit him, irrespective of what the consequences may be. Because since after I learned my lessons on the disadvantage of judging or doing things based on assumption, I started to take bold steps and good risks. So I got dressed in my skimpy skirt and a top and immediately made my way to the jail. On my way, I was lost in thought on what could be his condition, now that I've not seen him for 2 months. Who knows how he looks now? Can he still recognize me? Ugh, I just hope I can still see him. Amidst my fears, the one that fears me most was if my taxi driver friend would permit me to come close to him, because it's obvious that he was sent to jail because of me. That look of guilt was all over me, just like a rat that was caught stealing. "Gosh, I've passed the jail!" I screamed at the taxi driver that was driving me. "Are you stupid?" I rudely screamed out of annoyance. "You've passed the jail!" "Oh, sorry, ma'am. I was expecting you to tell me you want the light." The innocent taxi driver responded in a polite manner. Then I got conscientious of myself. This is not me. I was overreacting and transferring aggression because of what I'm about to face. Then I apologized to him and asked him to take me back to the jail, which we have already passed. He gave a slight sigh and headed to the roundabout to take an upturn back to the jail. At last we got there, and I alighted immediately in a hurry, heading to the gate when the taxi driver yelled out, "Madam, you've not paid me." I immediately came back and paid him in a hurry. Am I having a psychological problem or what? What's really happening to me? I seem not to understand myself anymore. Immediately, I got to the jail. By this time, I became intensively nervous. I got this feverish feeling all over me, causing me to shiver. Immediately, I saw the policeman walking up and down. I had to compose myself immediately. I got to the table where I was queried of who I came to see and who he is to me. Remember, I've decided to deal with pretense. So the true nature of what I felt for the taxi driver made me want to say something beyond a friend, but I sensed it could complicate issues as my parents are already involved in the case. So I just told them that he was just a friend. After the interrogation, I was asked to register my details, which I did without compulsion. I was taken to another room where I waited for him to be brought out. Oh, my heart skipped a beat as I looked at my friend. He has really changed a lot. His beard has grown so long and bushy. He used to be lean, tall, and handsome. But right now all those physical appearances are thrown to oblivion. How I wish I could find this thin air where they disappeared to, so I can restore them back. How impossible it is right now. Tears dripped down my cheek as I hugged him passionately, not letting him go. I felt like kissing away his tears, which were flowing like a river. His became uncontrollable that I had to instantly be strong for him. Suddenly, every fear that I had about him disappeared. He is too innocent and calm to hurt a fly. Talk more of committing a crime. I brought out my handkerchief and wiped away his tears. I promised him that I would do whatever it takes to see that he is out of jail. It's already been 2 months he's been in jail. Does it mean that nobody cares about him, and even his so-called uncle is not aware of his condition for them to leave him like this? How have you been, dear? As you can see, I am fine, he responded with a smile, which I feel was not real. As I was about to ask him the next question in my mind, he continued, It has been hell here, not seeing you for months, Carol. I have lost all sanity, but thank God, now that I have seen you, I feel much better. Carol, eating has been difficult for me, but trust your presence have changed everything in my system. I felt pity for him because I am certain that his suffering is as a result of our friendship. His words were so passionate that they swam into my marrows and sprouted out the feelings I had for him. I must be honest, although I don't know if it is a wise feeling, but by this time I felt like kissing him, especially those tears that kept dropping down his cheeks. I felt this magnetic force pushing my lips to his as we stood opposite each other with the table serving as a barrier. But then I gained this consciousness again to discontinue the action. Then he held my hands across the table. Carol, he called, I need you to do me a favor if you really value me and want the best of my happiness. This is the only thing that can bring me out of this jail alive. What is that? I responded without mincing words. I need you to go to my uncle's house. Take my house keys and get me the pictures of my cat. You know I can't be with my cat here. I just want to take a glance at it once more. She is the source of my joy. Please help me. I understood his plight, because my own cat has always been an antidepressant for me. That is how comforting cats can be, and true to the fact, at a time like this, Taxi Driver's cat is the only one that can help him overcome his depression. Do I really have an option? Not now. I promised to get to his uncle's house, collect his keys, and get the cat's pictures. Then I requested of his uncle's address, which he gave me. I hugged him and left for the mission. I headed immediately to Uncle Sam's house. On my way, I was still reflecting on what happened in there some minutes ago. That feeling that almost made me kiss him. Oh, it feels so good. Was this really out of pity, or was I just being real? I asked myself, well, time will tell. Let's go complete this mission first. Locating Uncle Sam's house wasn't really that stressful because Taxi Driver has already showed me his house before. On getting to Uncle Sam's house, he was at the table munching some fruits. He gave me a warm welcome. As I delivered the message, he immediately abandoned the fruits and went into his room and came out almost in a jiffy. He said, "Let's go." Like a military man, I followed after him as we both marched down to the Taxi Driver's house like soldiers. That anyone who saw us coming need not to be told that something was wrong. We arrived at the Taxi Driver's house, and as I was waiting to get the pictures from Uncle Sam, I spotted the cat running under the sofa. I was excited when I saw her, thinking she's going to smile at me, but she didn't. I tried to grab her, but she is very far from my reach. This attracted the help of Uncle Sam. He pushed her several times, and I finally got the cat. But while he pushed her, I also found a strange paper under the sofa, a paper with names and X's. X. I had to hide the paper from Uncle Sam, and I secretly left with it. After some minutes, Uncle Sam came out with a bag. He handed over the bag to me. He said that the bag contains all the pictures, but I shouldn't open it for any reason. All I need to do is hand it over to the taxi driver. This bag will probably take the taxi driver out from the jail, he warned. Now I'm beginning to sense something fishy about the whole scenario. I was so curious about the bag and even more curious about the strange paper I found under the sofa. So I decided to take the risk. When I arrived home, I opened the strange letter I found, and guess what I found? A paper with 7 names, and all of them were crossed with an X as they were eliminated. And in the end, I saw my name, Carol. And my name looks like it was waiting to get eliminated, or what I can call the next in line. I was astonished at what I saw. Could this be true? May there be this mistake somewhere? Or it's certainly not my own Carol. There and then, my feelings about the taxi driver automatically changed. Does this mean that the cops were right when they said that the taxi driver has done this in the past? Maybe the taxi driver was trying to fool me to get me assassinated much later. Oops. Don't really know the thought to believe now. My head got heavy. But that's not really my problem now. My problem is what to do with this mysterious paper that I found my name on. I was confused on whether to send the letter to the police or keep it secret. It really took me the whole week to think through. Not until the weekend when I decided to handle it my own way. I know it's quite risky for me to take the paper to see the taxi driver. Perhaps I would question him about this, because my life is at risk too. On getting to the jail, the first guard I passed strangely watched me, and I was a bit nervous. But it didn't take long for me to compose myself again. When I got to the next guard, the policeman asked me what was in the bag, and I said only some pictures, and while he tried to take my bag and inspect it thoroughly, he was interrupted by his colleague's urgent call. I was glad I made it finally to see the taxi driver. I can feel this ecstasy all over him this time, not because he saw me, but because I came with the bag, and without responding to my greeting, he immediately took the bag and hid it behind his back. After that, the taxi driver became uncomfortable with my presence, that he asked me to go, and when I was about to go, I drew closer to him, and I said, "There's something But he didn't give me any space to talk, and he shut me up, and said that I need to start going. He stood up, holding his stomach, acting like one who is badly pressed and need to ease his bowels. Do I really have an option? I had to leave. But I became more and more confused as I stepped out of the prison gate. I went home straight, thinking, I can calm my nerves. I tried to sleep, but it was nowhere to be found. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking on what to do next. Yes, I got an idea. I think I should talk to Uncle Sam about the paper. It was already 10 p.m., but I don't give a damn of whose axe is to be gored. I need to get this issue in my heart settled once and for all. So I picked up my phone and I called him. But he asked me to come over somewhere close to taxi driver's house. Without a second thought, I went straight because I need to offload the burden. When I got there, I noticed Uncle Sam was somehow drunk, and he asked me to join him on the sofa for a drink. I vehemently refused, although I'm almost 18, but I am not still allowed to drink, and I don't want to. I'm a girl on a mission, so I don't need anything to distract me. But he insisted and tried forcing the drink into my mouth. At the same time, he held my throat, pushing me to the wall and started muttering some words to me. You are a smart and brave girl. You did a great job. You're my hero. Blah, 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 blah. I couldn't take this anymore. Is this how to compliment someone? I pushed him away and took to my heels. Of course, I still kept my secret. The confusion this time is unfathomable, because I don't know why someone will be praising me, but yet holding my throat as though I'm fighting over something with him. That's quite ironical. I really need answers to these questions in my mind. I neither know who to believe now or who to confide in now. Should I go to the police or keep the secret and strange paper with my name still waiting to get crossed? I need your advice on what to do before I go nuts or make the wrong decision. And remember, if I delay, who knows the deadline for my elimination? It may be this last moment you are reading this. So do not hesitate to save a soul now. It was a very beautiful garden, well decorated with my best flowers, the roses. I was lying so comfortable in the arms of the taxi driver, and the next minute, he disappeared into thin air. I searched and searched for him that I almost felt bad, but suddenly I heard a sound with someone closing my eyes with his soft palm. I needed no prophet to tell me that it was the taxi driver. He appeared from the second tree. Then we started playing hide and seek in the garden as the trees smile at us and the birds whistle their melodious love song into our ears. For the second time, I didn't want to let him go. Suddenly, my alarm brought me back to reality. That made me realize that it was only a dream. Why can't this dream just continue? I cried. But then, how can I be playing so insecure with a man who has my name on his elimination list? Still on my bed pondering, I thank God it is a Saturday morning. No academic load, and I have myself all for me. Then I suddenly heard this big horn, and I stretched my eyes to see through the window what this early morning disturbance could be. Guess what I saw? I saw a taxi in my garden. I peeped very well to know whose taxi it is, but I was struggling because the weather was not yet very clear. I decided to come outside. As I was about opening the door, I heard the doorbell ring. I quickly opened the door, and there he is, the taxi driver, standing right in front of my door. Wow, he's finally out! I invited him inside, and he came in full of joy and happiness. I decided not to give him that warm welcome as usual because, for all I know, I'm no longer safe with him around me. I did the little I can by offering him a coffee. You can keep it on the table. This coffee is not what I need now. Then he started caressing my long, silky hair. The feelings of my dream just came over me again. I felt loved once more. I felt like holding the taxi driver again and kissing him all over. He gently drew my head to his chest and made me lie on it comfortably. Oh, this one place I always loved to be, on Daddy's body, but my parents are so strict that I never had such moments with them. Sometimes when I come close to him, seeking for just petting and care, the next thing would either be an interruption from a business call or a haste to work. Growing up was never fun for me, and now someone is giving it to me with quality attention, love, and care without seeking anything in return. But then, I was reluctant to allow him to have his way. Of course, you know that I was still afraid from the time I found the strange paper. You are not going to escape me this time, I murmured within myself. I was now very much out to talk to him about the papers I found, and when I was about to ask him, he interrupted me again. Let's go. I want to show you something, he said. I got more scared this time. Where is he taking me to? Maybe the elimination time for Carol has finally come today. What do I do now? Do I call the cops or my parents? They were the ones that put him in jail for a reason. I'm yet to find out. Then I summoned up the courage to ask him. Where are you taking me to, and for what reason? To my apartment, of course, he responded. Or do you have any problem with that? This time he laughed uncontrollably. Okay, because the last time you came you didn't come back? Oh, don't worry, no matter what it takes me. I'm going to make sure you sleep on your bed tonight. And excuse me, who says I'm going to take the whole of your day? I just want to show you something, and bring you back to the house. Certainly not more than an hour. I was still looking at him, and his babblings in bewilderment. I asked him to allow me to dress up. Then I sluggishly changed into a pair of combat shorts and a shirt and a pair of canvas shoes. I consciously wore this attire with the sense that if anything should happen and it calls for me to take to my heels or fight, I will not have any hinges doing that. Immediately I came out, he screamed, "Wow! That's my elegant queen! What a strong woman! Brave and smart!" Those were exactly the same words that Uncle Sam used on me holding my throat when I went to make the report. Guys! This time around, my fears knew no bound. Nevertheless, I reluctantly entered his taxi, and we went together to his apartment. On getting to his house, he didn't even care to offer me a seat or coffee. Rather, he immediately started searching for something. From the sitting room, he moved to the bedroom and came out again, scattering everywhere. Now he was already sweating profusely and was very nervous. "Who could have taken this? It was right here," he exclaimed. Then he took to his phone, which he forgot in the taxi, and called Uncle Sam on the phone. He did not answer. He sank on the sofa with a deep sigh. "What is it you are looking for? Tell me so I can help you," I said to him. He laughed hilariously at me, and said that it is something I don't know and I shouldn't know until today. My heart skipped a beat and I screamed, "Till today? What is happening today?" I questioned him. He didn't respond to my question, but drew me close to his bosom the second time and started caressing myself. "You're a genius, and I like that. But this one is a secret for me." Then he aggressively stood up and said, "Yes, let's go to Uncle Sam's house. He might know where it is." So we decided to go to his place. On arrival, taxi driver told me to wait in the car, and he went to Uncle Sam, and they started fighting with words. "Why are you lying to me? What did I do to you? Just tell me where it is." These were the words I was hearing as I eavesdropped. It didn't take long. Taxi driver came back in the car very nervous, and while we were going back to the house, I asked, "What's going on? Why are you so nervous?" He said nothing. "My uncle claims not to see what I've been looking for." There and then he told me that he had a paper where he put name ideas for his cat, and he can't find it. My goodness, is that all? I was surprised. Why, it should be a problem to him. Then I understood. You know the affinity we have with our cats. We value them so much, and anything concerning it. But then, the paper isn't the problem. But there is a precious name there, which I want to show you. Now I know that the paper was nothing scary. They were just name ideas, and he also wanted to name his cat with my name. This one got me crazy. You know, I was beginning to feel like a princess now. I excitedly told him that I have a surprise for him too, when we get to my house. This time my fears have already melted. I was beginning to see that lovely and caring friend in him, as before. On getting home, I rushed immediately under my bed where I hide confidential things. I ran out of the room in a dancing and excited motion, and I showed him the paper and told him that I wanted to save it for him. He jumped on his feet and lifted me up, flinging me around the room, looking into my eyes. He wanted to say something, but then remained speechless. Finally, we went back to his house again. Behold the cat lying in her normal position on the taxi driver's bed. This time, immediately she saw me. She smiled at me, and he carried his cat up facing me, and named the cat Carol, my name. You are very beautiful, meek, and smart. That's why I gave you this name after Carol, my friend. Both of you possess the same quality. And he handed over the cat to me, saying, Carol, behold your namesake, Carol. Oh, that was one of the best nights ever. He really treated me like a queen and also thanked me a lot for everything I did when he was in prison. I have a good news to break to you. My taxi driver friend announced to me that he wanted to open a beautiful big boutique for me, where I can sell cats and its accessories. Talay! Oh, my Cinderella dance! I couldn't help the excitement that was written all over me. I jumped on him, giving a big, big hug in appreciation. I would have kissed him, but I was still being a disciplined and good girl, you know? This is a dream come true. I know how I have longed for this, but my parents wouldn't let me have my way. Wow! I can imagine the name of my boutique. Carol Cat Boutique, or Catty Car Boutique. Home for your cat. Whichever one, I can't wait to see the reality of this offer. My desperate mood can be defined from my voice. When? Where? How? I questioned. He was happy that I'm excited too. He told me to calm down. That will be soon. But first, he wants to give me a treat by sending me to travel to another state of my choice. That sounds great, but too good to be true. The taxi driver is just full of surprises. And what I did to deserve all this is what I can't tell now. In addition, he said that on my arrival, I will also have to bring a bag from his friend. Not again. A bag? The last one was not funny. I was still shocked, confused on whether to embark on the trip or not. Meanwhile, he is still awaiting my response. Why on earth would he just send only me for this trip? Why won't he come along with me? I cannot forget the saying that once bitten, twice shy. Should I take this second risk again? For sure, if I am to embark on this journey, my parents would not be aware of it. What if at this period my parents visit me in school, and what will be my response? How do I face my parents when I return? I'm thinking, what would go wrong? It sounds just like a free trip. But I told the taxi driver that I will think about that and let him know. Really? Hope you're not going to take all ages to think about this. I expected you to make it snappy and give me a yes, and then you leave the rest for me, because the next thing you will see in your hands is your plane ticket ready to go on board. He snapped his fingers. I still have no one else to confide in. What do you guys think? Should I make a free trip that's going to be fun and give me exposure and experience as a young girl? What should I do? Please let me know in the comments below. I have always seen that adulthood is more of an elusive, sort of abstract concept that I'd thought when I was younger. I just assumed you'd get to a certain age and everything would make sense. That's just what I think right now. I feel like making my own decisions without my parents' consent. Yeah, I'm an adult after all because I'm already 18. Some of my age mates are already having boyfriends, but I've not got into any relationships before. But you know what? Now I'm ready for it, and I do not doubt that my taxi driver friend is waiting for me to give him the next blink to get closer to me more than ever. As you know, the taxi driver is a kind and generous person. He is someone I've always loved to be around, irrespective of the misunderstandings of the past. It was no longer as though he was reading my heart as regards to what I want. Becoming fond of me is an understatement comparing to what started existing between me and the taxi driver, especially since he told me of my free trip to Brazil. One cool evening, I was at home when he knocked on my door. I opened the door and guess what I saw? A bunch of rose flowers standing right in front of me, but the knocker was nowhere to be found. I know it will be you, I said, kissing the flower as I made my way into my room. Then he appeared from my behind. Ah! My heart skipped a beat. He hugged me, telling me how much he values and respects me. I love it when someone uses the phrase, I value you. He told me that he would like to spend the night with me, and it was going to be the best night of my life. You know that when you are gone to Brazil, I will miss you so much. So permit me to enjoy quality time with you before your departure. Immediately he said that, I became skeptical because of the last incident that took place, the last time we wanted to spend time together. But then, since I found out that taxi driver is not a bad person, I now feel free and safe with him. So I accepted. Yeah, I accepted to spend the night with him at my house. He is so lovely. During dinner, he fed me as though I was a baby. You know, I can't tell the last time someone fed me, talk more of petting me. Indeed, that night was a night of nights. We freshened up and then retired to bed, though he decided to sleep on the floor. I was surprised. But before then, he came to my bed and whispered to me, I've got a movie for us to watch. Do you mind joining me? Sure, I screamed in excitement. He took me to the couch and played the movie. Oh, it was a blue film. He turned off the lights, and all we could hear were moans from the television. We watched with keen interest until we were sent to bed. That night, the taxi driver sneaked into my bed, and that was how it started. He would touch me on sensitive parts of my body. I was very aroused and excited. My heart was pounding, and my respiration was serious. I had never been this aroused before. Then he whispered to me again, I love you with all my heart. and I promise not to hurt you, but grant me this offer, to stay with you throughout this weekend. This is what I wanted. I wish I can have this feeling over and over again. I gave him a yes, and he started kissing and caressing me. This happened almost every night for those 3 days we stayed together. We watched more movies, and we practiced what we watched, but he never did anything bad to me. I just can't stop loving you, Carol. I feel like kissing you over and over with passionate kisses, with eyes closed amidst the cool breeze under splashing rain. Even in my silence, I miss everything about you. Every time I start missing you, I try to pacify myself by thinking that the worst is already over. But no matter what I do, loneliness casts gloom and darkness. Like a raging, merciless tornado, it sucks away my life's happiness. Just hug me, Carol, and feel my heart barely limping through. I'm not asking for a lot from you. All I need is you. Your love is all I care about. Just your life alone. Just your love. Like a tree withering away without rain. Like a bird trapped mercilessly in a cage. Like a fish doing circles in a tiny bowl. Like a tiger, chained, loathing in rage. Like a flower dying under the harsh sun. Like a lake drying up in a drought. This is how I feel from within when I'm lost in thoughts of you, my dear Carol. That was a love song composed by the taxi driver to me on the last night we spent together. As days went by, I discovered that what we were doing was wrong, and we needed to start having some safety measures. He declared his love for me and showed me how much by doing things for me. He did my household chores, took me for a shopping spree in town. He didn't want to see anyone around me. At night, he would touch me and tell me he couldn't wait for me to grow so we could be doing that together. I was already forgetting about the trip to Brazil when he reminded me of it on the morning of his departure from my house. Then he dips hands into his pocket and gave me a one-way ticket to Brazil and wraps of money. I guess this is going to take you for 1 week to stay in Brazil. Your flight is booked for Saturday morning by 8 a.m. Immediately he left. I got back into the house. I was dancing all over the house full of joy. It seems like a dream to me. Carol in Brazil! Wow! I started getting the things I need ready for the trip. On Saturday morning, the taxi driver picked me up from my house, and we headed to the airport. He reminded me again that it's going to be a fun trip while we are heading to the airport, and upon arrival he says, "Good luck, Carol." Good luck? Why is he saying good luck to me instead of safe trip or journey mercies? I pondered. However, being carried away by excitement, I took it as nothing serious. It was a cool flight to Brazil, and I enjoyed every bit of it. On arrival to Rio de Janeiro, the second largest city in Brazil, my excitement knew no bounds as I sight the statues of Rio. So amazing! I landed at about noon, and it's very hot there. As I picked my luggage, I saw 2 guys waiting for me with my name boldly written on a paper, Carol. Without a second thought, they approached, although it was such a cold one without pleasantries. I entered their car as we embarked on a very long journey. It was then I realized that I have been taken from the city of Rio to a far and poor city of Piauí, and the hotel they lodged me in is nothing good to write home about. Very old and dirty. Gosh! Taxi driver, where are you? Was this what you promised me? I screamed. Out of depression, I asked the big guy if this is really where I'm going to stay. The big guy says, "Shut up," and you are not allowed to move from the hotel because the place is very dangerous. And they shut the door and left me. I was left alone. No dinner, no intercom connection. At midnight, I was scared the more because there was no light for me to even see myself, Carol. At 6 a.m. the next morning, the door was pushed open by one of the big guys. Just like when we first met, no pleasantries nor greetings comes. He hands 8 bottles of drinks filled with a purple fluid over to me and asks me to put it in a translucent bag. "What is this?" I asked him. He said, "These are the taxi driver's stuff. He needs them." I was getting more inquisitive this time as I saw the purple fluid drip again from the bag where I was parking them. "Why does he need this?" I asked again. He responded by saying that these are fantastic drinks and are produced only in Brazil. The big guy handed over my plane ticket to me to fly back with a fly time at 7 a.m. and shot the door saying, "I'm waiting for you downstairs. Hurry up." Oops, it's already 6:30 a.m. I somehow managed to fit all bottles to a bag, and we head to the airport. On arrival, the big guy left me at the airport and immediately disappeared. I innocently made my way to the control, and I queued together with other passengers. As I was waiting to get on the plane, a policeman screamed at me, "Hey, madam, please come with me." "What's wrong?" He sent me to a control check and asks what's in the bag. "I can spot that fluid dripping from your bag." I immediately told him that it's nothing but some drinks. In a twinkle of an eye, a lady came with a stick, opened a drink, and put a cotton board in the bottle, and the cotton board immediately turned from white to blue. Then the inspector said, "The result is positive for drugs." I was shocked. It was as if it were the movies. They started interrogating me without a break. "Which sent you? You're a drug pusher." They asked more and more questions, and I started crying. Then the police gave me the chance to call anyone for 1 minute, and after that will send me to custody. Who else will I call than my parents? I thought about the most lenient of my parents who can tolerate this bad news I'm about to break. "Okay, Mom." I called Mom on the phone. I told her that I'm in the police custody in Brazil. Mom is shocked, and the phone stops. I cannot believe it that I am sentenced to jail for 30 days. For what, I do not know. Guys, what wrong did I commit? What is my offense? Is it a bad thing to help a fellow? Please tell me, what should I do now? Help me by commenting on the video. Life can be devastating, especially when what you thought would never happen happens to you. Back in jail, I was kept at the female sector of the jail. Sitting at the door where I waited for the jailer to come and take me in, I was sitting close to a woman. She asked me what my offense was. I told her that I was caught carrying a liquid substance which I did not know was a drug. She shook her head in pity and said, "My daughter, it will not be a funny experience." Immediately, I got gripped by fear. I mean fear of the unknown. I began to imagine what my experience will look like. I've never been to prison before, never in my life. Initially, I was scared of meeting those real and fierce-looking drug bandits. I finally landed in the jail. That day, it was as if a new prey for consumption had just landed. I got scared the more because I have never slept in a jail before. The questions were too numerous for me to answer. What's your name? What's your offense? How long will you be here? Well, I was able to answer the few I could. Then I went to bed. Throughout the night, tears dripped down my cheeks, wondering what my parents would be thinking about me. I searched for sleep, but I could not get any. I was completely shattered. Even if I was to be jailed, Certainly not in another country where I knew nobody. I was still dumbfounded, staring at the ceiling and wishing that the morning breaks as fast as possible. The next day, my mom came to see me in the jail. I hugged her as we lavished rivers of tears on each other's shoulders. Deep within Mom, she knows I am innocent. It was Dad that scolded me, asking what business I had to do in Brazil from school. I had no option than to explain everything that happened to them. Dad gave me assurance of getting me out of here this month. It was not such an easy one because I have no witness but myself. I could not even reach my taxi driver again. Then a few months down the line, I was still in a really bad way. Then I went up to court. I got 2.5 years. I was only 18. I was shocked and scared of being away from my family and friends for so long. I have never been in jail before, so I didn't know what to expect. I just wasn't myself. I couldn't sleep. I was keeping myself to myself, just staying in my cell. I've never made a friend or talked to anybody. I hated the taxi driver the more. He played with my life and sense. I began to have negative thoughts about him. Obviously, there is nothing good about my taxi driver. He has just been taking me from one problem to the other. This should be the 3rd time now that he is landing me into a problem. First, it was the letter under his cushion. Second, was his arrest, which was done by my parents. And now, he brought me to Brazil, only for me to end up in jail. What kind of man is this? I scream in agony. One of my jailmates jumped out of bed when she heard my scream, thinking that something is wrong. But when she entered my room, she noticed I was fine, apart from the sweat that was all over my body. She came close to me and drew me close to herself, cuddling me back to bed. She is such a nice person. With the stories I heard about the jail, I didn't believe a good person can be met in jail. She asked me what was the problem. I was still speechless. After waiting for some minutes, I finally spoke to someone in the jail. I felt loved once more. I hid nothing from Cynthia. I told her everything that happened. How I met the taxi driver, and how I fell in love with him, and the challenges I have experienced from being close to him all this while. But then I noticed something. Cynthia kept smiling at me while I was telling her the story. I was surprised. What is it that my story was not touchy enough? I was disturbed about her response that I asked her if she has had such an experience before now. She said not really, just that she was imagining how good the taxi driver was to me. I was really surprised because this was a taxi driver that brought me here. All she said after hearing my story was, "Will you get something good without getting bad? It's not possible that all these just happened like that." This statement got me thinking throughout the morning, but I decided not to get confused and came to the conclusion that taxi driver just used and dumped me. Months went by, and I didn't hear from my parents talk of more of the taxi driver. This was another wonder for me. How can my parents abandon their only child in a jail in another country? It was that bad that even when I tried calling with the jail cell phone, they would not pick my calls. I sent them messages still yet. I got no response from them. Are you sure these are my parents? Because I don't see the reason why a mother and father should abandon their own child, even if she committed murder. I felt like killing myself. I think that should be the best solution since nobody cares. Not even the court called up my case again. Well, for the court, I don't blame them because I had no lawyer. Because the last time I checked, my parents promised to come with my lawyer, who will take me out of jail. My dad had the best lawyer in my country. From the cases I have learned he has won so far, they are nothing to compare to it. All he would need is just a truthful statement of the story from me. Give him the next 24 hours and I'm out of here. But I never saw a glimpse of neither my dad nor his lawyer. On one Saturday morning about 2 a.m., I was sleeping and the memories of me and my parents kept flashing down my memory. How loving the taxi driver was to me, and how he promised to set up my cat boutique was the second thing that came to my mind. And then the last thought I had was that of my cat, Karina. I was debased. I thought of how lonely she would be by now. Has she run away from the house when she saw no sign of my return? Oh my God! How has she been feeding? Who has been cuddling her during the snow because of the cold would be hectic by this time. I woke up from these memories weeping profusely, and I felt like killing myself and forgetting everything. I thought of getting a knife or gun from the jailers, but they were all in custody of their weapons. Then a thought came into me. If I can stay under the snow and get trapped there, it will be nice. After all, nobody will know because the snow would have heaped on my body and everybody will think it is a normal snowberg. What happened to me that early morning was what I could not fathom. All I could remember was that I stood up and took a walk outside into the snow. I stood outside the snow trying to forget my past. The doctor said I came back to consciousness after 3 days, and it was alleged that I wanted to commit a suicide in a snowberg. When I was unconscious, I could not remember any other thing. All I saw was myself walk through a dark lane with my cat. She was so happy to see me. She jumped on every part of my body, but I noticed she lost one of her eyes. When I saw this, I was angry, and I wondered of what would have led her to this state. Could it be that she was trying to break through the window when she did not see a sign of my return and got cut? But thank God that I woke up. When I woke up, everything changed. It was as if I was in a new world. On opening my eyes, I saw a lot of changes. I was surrounded with flowers everywhere on the hospital bed. The walls, even the floor, were well decorated with rose flowers. Oh, they are my best flowers. Another spectacular thing I saw was signs written on the doorpost telling me to get well soon. Another read, "We love you. Please come home. We miss you." The hospital room was calm with no sign of any human being. I couldn't understand what was going on. I stretched my hands and legs, but I didn't feel any pain. I felt a bit relieved that nothing serious happened to me. I took one of the flyers and perceived the healing aura that came from the petals. I remained in the room without making a move, but kept wondering on who this could be. I thought aloud, I know this is from my cellmates. They love me to the extent of saving me from the iceberg. When I remembered the care and love they shower on me whenever I feel pale and lonely, they make sure I feel good by singing to me. Suddenly, the doors opened. Guess who I saw? It was Karina, my cat. She ran onto my bed and hugged. This is unbelievable. I expected to see the jailers around me to get me secured so that I don't run away. But the opposite was the case. I saw my cellmates walking and started singing. Happy birthday to me. How could I have forgotten that it was my birthday? I just turned 19, and I never knew. Then the big shocker came when I saw the jailers also walk up in the same mood. It was a dancing party amidst a lot of drinking. Indeed, my mood was lightened, and I got more excited. I stepped down and joined them in the dance. The door opened again, and who I saw was unbelievable to me. It was the 2 policewomen that caught me with the black liquid substance at the airport. I got scared the more and began to withdraw my steps backward, looking for somewhere to hide. but they called me on to feel free and also celebrate my day. They joined in the dance. I tried feeling free, but I couldn't help it but to remain careful and conscious of my environment. I was still trying to understand what was happening when my parents walked in. I wanted to hug them in excitement, but then I had a mixed feeling. Why should I welcome them after abandoning me for the months in the jail? But my mom rushed and hugged me. She pleaded for forgiveness as she promised to explain all that transpired to me. The next person I saw was beyond my imagination. The taxi driver walked in and knelt down in front of me with a ring in his hands. I was mute. Then Mom and Dad and everybody in the room screamed, "Please say yes!" Then Dad said that everything that happened was a deal to check my love for the taxi driver, who happened to be a multi-millionaire in the fashion industry. I said yes because I still love my taxi driver. We got married and loved each other forever. Hi, I'm Susan. I'm going to tell you a story which occurred a couple of years ago when I was 19 years old, but still remains in my mind because it can never be forgotten. It was indeed an event that can never be forgotten. I lived a life in a family which consisted of 4 children, 2 guys and 2 ladies, which I happened to be one amongst those ladies. I was the oldest in my family because I happened to be the firstborn of the family. Right within me, I knew that I had a whole lot of responsibilities on me. My life from the beginning was very fun, and I grew up living with my family, friends, and my neighbors, though there were a lot of ups and downs then in my family, but I was very hyperactive back then. I was very hyper and wouldn't stop moving around the place from one joint to another. I was so not back then and always ever seemed to get my homework done at school. I was born at Kaiser Hospital. The first place I lived was on the street via Harriet and was right next to a train station. It was fun and so much annoying listening to the sound of arriving trains then. It was always noisy when the train passed by because it will shake the house and scared all the animals in the surroundings. It wasn't the best place to live, but as time goes, we eventually moved to the hills, where we never experienced the noise of a train again. I have never for once really thought about where my life was going. All I know was that I'm the firstborn of the house, and I'm sure I have a lot of responsibilities on me. I always believed life took me where I wanted to go. I never thought that I was the one who took myself where I wanted to go. After we moved to our new apartment on the hills, my parents decided to change the school I attended because it would be too stressful going to my former school from my current location. Immediately I entered the high school, my mentality about life changed. This is why I chose to go to college when I was asked which school I would love to go. I believe that college will give me the keys to unlock the doors of life. This way I can choose for myself where I go, instead of someone choosing for me. I have chosen to go to the local community college to get used to the college experience. It was on a Monday morning, my first day in my new school. My mom woke me up so early so as to get prepared and not be late for school. I got to school before the assembly started immediately. When the assembly bell was rang, I followed the direction which a lot of people followed, so as to get to the assembly ground. It's all amazing and awesome. It's all totally different from the way it was held in my previous school. I was really happy and excited. After I got to class, the teaching and the students were all amazing. During the break hour, some female friends came to meet, asking of my name and trying to make friends with me. Now the day is over. We all need to go home. I followed the school bus home so as to get home on time to gist my parent how my day went in my new school, only for me to get home and discover that my parents are fighting each other again, as usual. I just went into my room quietly and kept to myself all day. College life can be an exciting time, but at the same time, it can be so challenging. I know this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a positive influence in the lives of children. I want to be able to stand up and show the children that it's okay to be yourself and stand up for what you believe in. I am a well-rounded student. For 2 years, I was actively involved in a girls' organization. This experience taught me many things. We were actively involved in community service activities, for which I received the Silver Award, the second highest award in the organization. I was so happy when that award was given to me, reason being that all what I planned for my life is getting achieved, one after the other, and also I'm making my parents proud. I learned about the value of friendship and patience with others. This organization first introduced me to my future career, which was a great plus to my life. I was also involved for 1.5 years in a student government club on college. In this club, I learned many life lessons, one of which was the value of hard work. I was one of the few people that organized the junior-senior prom of 2000. My responsibilities included planning coronation, buying and organizing decorations, planning the busing schedule, booking the photographers, fundraising, etc. This taught me about hard work, but the best part of it was going to prom knowing I was one of the only reasons that made it happen. In my family, it was so much normal to see my parents fighting and throwing things at each other. It has always been a painful moment for me and my siblings anytime we see our parents in such scenario. A case once happened back then which was so serious and critical when my father threw a bottle of beer at my mom's head, and she ended up in the hospital. It was indeed a painful experience because we almost lost my mom back then. My father threw a bottle of beer at her just because she refused to change the television station to his own choice. My mom spent more than a month in the hospital because she landed in a coma after the bottle was thrown at her. A series of money was spent on her before she finally came back to life. After that incident, all we thought was that my dad will come back to his senses and stop the way they both fight each other. But no, reverse is the case. The fighting still continued. Many of these events keep happening in my family, and even our neighbors got tired of settling issues between them. And if it wasn't for the school I and my siblings attend, we don't know how we would have survived all this. So it's time for competition in my class, and the teacher decided to share us into 2 groups. So in my class, there were 2 groups. Each group loved their singers and their sport teams, and yes, I was made the leader in my team. We defended with everything, and also we had our stars. For example, we loved Justin Bieber, and the other group was against us for it. We had a lot of fights with other opponents, and especially after school. To be honest, the other group was a bit weaker than us, reason being that they were much lower in number, and they got no talented person in their midst, but somehow they started to get their strength when we had a new student in our class and the teacher decided to fix her in the other group, and the name of the student was called Barbara. Barbara came from another school for the reasons I don't know, but when she came to our class and she'd been fixed in group 2, she started fighting my teammates every day for no reason. She would take up every little thing that happened. Barbara was a good-looking girl and so much attractive to every male in our class because she got a pretty face and some nice shapes and curves. A lot of guys fight over her just to get her number. Different guys are dying just to talk to her. Barbara becomes so much popular and famous in the college, all of a sudden, But with me, I know she will be up to something later in future. Even teachers started to love her. More than we do. She was made a prefect and also the class captain in less than some months. Though Barbara is very brilliant and good at what she does. Barbara was also a girl who came from a rich family that were very well known and well-to-do, and guess what? Just to my surprise, some of my teammates left my team and started moving to her team. One by one, for the reason I don't know. And at the end of the day, I was only left with 3 of my girlfriends and Mason. Mason. Mason is a good-looking boy, blonde, and he was a type of boy that every girl would like to have because he got everything he wanted in a guy. Mason is honest, kind, cute, brilliant, caring, trustworthy, attractive, and fun to be with, and a lot more of criteria embedded in him. To be honest, I like him a lot, and I'm tripping for him, but I don't want to be forward as a lady because I think he loves me as well. Well, I'll tell you about our love story later. One faithful day, while I was in class, I noticed that Mason was missing in class. I was still trying to look around for him in class, but then I heard some voices calling my name. Susan! Susan! I tried tracing the voice outside the class. I rushed to see what's going on, and what I saw was Barbara talking to Mason in a private area. I was so pissed and jealous at first, but I never knew what they were talking about. So I decided to stay calm. But in all my mind, I knew Barbara was up to something. After class, I ran to meet Mason, to stylishly ask what they were both discussing. But to my surprise, Mason was just beating around the bush. Same thing happened the following day, but this time, when they saw me, they got detached immediately. I asked Mason again, "What's going on?" He said nothing. She just asked me to help her out in something. So I told him that he's trying to leave my team as well, or what? But then he shouted at me and left. Then I knew something had gone wrong. Days went by, and obviously Mason has changed toward me entirely, so one day I decided to secretly sneak on Mason's phone to check his messages and chat. And then I saw what marveled me. A lot. I saw he texted Barbara, and Barbara sent him some hearts and love texts to him. And from there, I understood that they are loving each other, which means that Barbara has achieved part of her plans. But I will make sure that her plan will not be achieved completely. So I decided that one day I'm going to approach Barbara to talk some shit to her head. So that day after school hour, I went straight to Barbara to confront her. But then immediately I got to where she was staying. All what I planned to say wiped off my head, so I went blank. But then I told her to leave Mason alone, and I went further, saying to her that Mason is my boyfriend, that she should let him be, otherwise you're going to have a problem with me. She was shocked seeing me in that manner because I have never for once behaved in such a manner ever since I got to that college. The following day, after we left the assembly ground, Mason came towards my direction to approach me and shouted at me that what effrontery do I have to speak to Barbara in such manner? He so much raised his voice at me that few numbers of people looked toward our direction, and I was seriously embarrassed. Throughout my stay in school that day, I was not myself. I did not talk to anyone. I kept to myself, and after the school hour, I went home quietly, without saying a word to anybody. When I got home, I found my parents having issues again and fighting. I never knew when I busted into tears in their presence immediately. My parents stopped the fight and faced my direction. I just went quietly to my room and locked the door. I was so depressed that I was lost in thought all day that I slept off without eating. The issues between my parents and the one going on in my life is so frustrating. Now I've decided to stand on my feet, never to let my family issues or my personal life issues bring me down. Now Barbara has taken all my teammates, and now she is also taking my lovely Mason. I will never let that happen, and it will not happen. So I decided to take some naughty move, but I later ended up messing myself up with it. One day I texted Mason, "Sweetheart, can you please come over to my place so that we can practice our homework together?" But I was surprised with the reply I got back from him. But then I'm sure it was Barbara that took his phone to reply back to me. So Barbara took Mason his phone and replied to me saying, "I'm not your sweetheart. Please don't write to me again. I hate you." Immediately after the reply, she took a screenshot of the message I sent to Mason and spread it all the class the following day. When I got to school the following day, I discovered that people were just laughing at me, and then I later noticed that it was because of the message I sent to Mason. So immediately, I went straight to meet Mason and asked him about the message, and he told me that his phone was with Barbara when I sent the message yesterday. So she was the one that spread the screenshot. I was so ashamed of myself for some moment, but then I never let that discourage me at all, because I already got my mind made up. But then I thought of it. Why don't I just go and meet Barbara face to face, and then we can talk it out with our actions? So I decided to go meet her. So this is it. I couldn't stand it anymore. So I just have to tell Barbara that I have a beef. I want to fight. I will wait for you after class. She was surprised hearing me say that, but I just have to take the move. Class is over. Immediately after the class, I went out so fast so as to go and wait for her. I was waiting for her outside. It took her up to an hour before she showed up. I already thought she would not be coming, but then I saw her arriving with all her teammates. I was looking into her eyes until she came close enough, and I pushed her with all my force I got, and she fell backwards and hit her head on the concrete. At first, I was happy that she fell on the ground, but then everyone screamed and ran away because Barbara refused to get up from the floor. Barbara was not coming onto her feet. I was very scared and feeling feverish immediately. I screamed her name, but she refused to stand up. She remained on the ground. Then I saw some teacher coming our way, so I ran away. I rushed home with fear all over me. My brothers asked me what was wrong. All I could say was to lie to them, saying it was a teacher that flogged me in school because I did not do well in my classwork. When my mom noticed I didn't come out for dinner, she came into my room to check on me and asked me what was wrong. I told her nothing happened, but tears were all over my face. I was unable to hold back the tears. She was all around me that night, but I did not say a word to her. She persuaded me to talk, but those words are too heavy for me to say. She left my room without hearing a word from me, but within me, I'm sure she will still know about it. I couldn't sleep all night. I was trying to imagine what could have happened. At a point, I was blaming myself. Why did I make the move of telling her to come and meet outside? Why did I push her? Why did I confront her? Why didn't I just let everything go? Series of questions were just running through my mind all the night. I was unable to close my eyes for just 1 second. Such a thing has never happened to me before. I could not open up for my parents because I never knew what they would say to me or do if I should explain the situation to them. The next day, I didn't go to school. I received a call from Mason, but I did not pick his call up. I was panicked and scared. Then in the afternoon, a teacher called my parents and explained everything that happened to them. They also notified my parents the update about Barbara's condition, that Barbara is in the hospital. She'd been admitted and in a state of coma. Immediately, my parents came to my room. They met me crying, but as a parent, even though they were not happy with the situation, they just have to console me at the moment. So we left for the school immediately. On getting to the principal's office, I was questioned for doing such an act, and a lot more was said to me. I was suspended from coming to school. Now I'm living a life of regret. I was unable to see Mason again, my teammates, my friends, and a lot more. Days after days, since I was not allowed to come to school again, I was in my room doing nothing but praying to God to heal Barbara, because I know a lot of things that is attached to it if she passes away. So one faithful day, after a week, we got the news that Barbara passed away. Oh my God! How come? How did it happen? Did God refuse to answer my prayers? Many of questions were just running through my head. I was weeping and rolling on the floor. Everyone was shocked, but I was even frightened and afraid the more. According to the doctor's report, Barbara had a large tumor on her head, but also said that she had an internal bleeding, which was too much, that she lost a lot of blood. My life ended there, because immediately she landed at the hospital, her parents already filed a case at the station. Now that her death has been announced, I have no other choice than to face the wrath of government. So I was arrested and sent to court. I was sent to juvenile detention for 4 years. Now I ruined my life with anger. I ruined my life with jealousy. Going to school has been stopped. I put my parents in shame. Now Mason has forgotten about the person called Susan. My plan and what I wish to become has been crumbled with my own hand. If and only if I could take back the hand of time, then I would not have allowed this to happen. If and only if this cup can pass over me, then I will be forever grateful. But all this are only mere thoughts which can never come to pass. I spent all the 4 years in regrets and lived alone, and with 100 times of more problems than what I have experienced in school. It was indeed a hell. I never wish anyone to go there, not even my enemies. I cried every day and spent many nights thinking about what I did to Barbara. In my head sometimes came a reason telling me to stop, because Barbara left, but not for my fault. But then, again, deep in me, I knew that I was the person who is guilty of all this. I found 1,000 ways I should react to that situation to stop this from happening. And I still, in my mind, got Barbara, and still think about what I should have done instead. The situation was so serious that I feel guilty, and I can't pass a day without thinking about her. I ruined it all. Now the day has come. 4 years has come and gone. I never knew it's already 4 years because I lost count already. On that faithful day, an officer came toward me and told me to come out, that it's time for me to be released. I was so happy again, knowing fully well that I'm going to see my family again. When I got to the officer's office, I saw my younger ones with joy in my heart. I gave them a huge and long hug. So the officer told me they were the ones that sent for my family, since it's already time for me to be released. My siblings are now grown up, but not looking well kept. When I noticed that I did not see our parents, I asked them what was about our parents. But they told me that when we get home, everything will be explained. Well, I didn't get to worry myself about that because I was so happy and joyous. Finally, I got home and everywhere is now changed. The surroundings and the whole environment is changed completely. I shouted, "Mom! Mom! Mom!" But to my surprise, I received answer from no one. I called my dad. Also, no reply as well. Then I asked my younger ones, where are they? Then they broke the news, saying they are both dead. I shouted, "How? What happened? Who killed them?" All these questions were asked with tears on my face. I was told Mummy died after some month. I went to jail because of the thought of seeing her own first child being sentenced to prison. And also, Dad died some years after Mum passed away. He had turned into a drunkard, and he drank all day and night, regretting all his actions over Mum and not taking proper care of us. They also told me that they've been surviving from helping people with their house chores and lots more of petty work so that they can feed and go to school daily. I busted into tears so loud that my younger ones just had to leave me to cry it out. Day after day, I need to get out of the thought of what life has given to me and move on with what I have for myself. My schooling career has been hindered because I need to put some food on the table for my younger ones. So I went searching for a job as a salesperson in a nearby supermarket, which I was actually accepted, and I was getting paid by the end of the month, and I was using that to take care of my siblings. I was able to send my junior ones to school, even if it was not up to a normal standard school, but at least I was trying my best to be a father and mother to them. Also, my boss at work has been so supportive financially and in a word of encouragement because I told her about my story, and she was really touched when she heard about it. After some years, I was in the supermarket performing my normal daily activities, and all of a sudden, a Prince Charming young cute guy walked in, making an inquiry on what he wants to get from the other staff, but I was attending to other customers. Immediately, I heard the guy's voice. It is so much sounds familiar. I looked up to see who was talking, and guess what? It was Mason. I screamed at the top of my voice, "Mason!" He was so shocked to see me, and he was so very happy as well. He asked what I was doing here, and I told him. I'm one of their staff, and guess what? Mason is now a top medical doctor in a well-known hospital in the country. He collected my contact that day and fixed a date for us to see and talk. Well, so fast I and Mason get along with each other. After I narrated all that happened to him, right from the time I was sentenced to prison till date, Mason and I became best of friends, and now he explained to me what him and Barbara were discussing those days in the college. He told me that Barbara and him were planning on how Group 1, which was my team, will win the competition. And as for my teammates leaving my group, he said it was all a planned work. He told me that the screenshot she sent round the school was just to divert my attention, so I would feel jealous. Now I was so ashamed of myself, and I prayed to God for forgiveness. After all that, luckily for me, Mason and I continue our love story from where we had stopped it in college days. Now I got to remember Barbara the more every blessed day. Not up to a year, Mason proposed to me, and guess what? I said yes. Now I am married and have a daughter which I named Barbara. I want it to be that every time I call her to remind me what I did. Though Mason was not in support of me naming our daughter Barbara, but I had to plead with him to please allow me. I want to pay the sentence, and yes, I am paying it every day. I cry every day and pray for her. God bless Barbara.
Let's go back to late August 2017 when I, after not going on a date or actually even talking to a man for 9 months, decided to download Tinder. and Bumble. Turns out it's all the same people on both apps. Same dis, different pics, am I right? I met a guy named Mike. We talked and drank beer at the since closed Green Lake Bar and Grill for 3 lovely hours, and afterward I walked him to his car. His car, because I suck at parallel parking, and in an effort to avoid having the patrons at my destination witness the embarrassing attempts and failures of properly operating a vehicle, I have been deemed fit to drive for over a decade. I find an empty street, ditch the car, and walk half a mile or more every time. Gotta get my steps. Do people still count those? I don't. Whatever. Anyway, we get to his car and it's a wreck, full of overflowing cardboard boxes and garbage in the back seat. The exterior paint is peeling and there are empty cigarette boxes strewn about, tobacco ash on every surface, spilling like slow lava flows from every crevice. Crooked butts peek out from under the seats like the stale McDonald's french fries of my grandmother's minivan throughout my childhood. I am half convinced that Mike has lived full time in this car at one point recently. Total dirtbag aesthetic. So naturally, I was swooning. We said goodbye and hugged briefly, politely. He didn't try to kiss me. A dirtbag, possibly homeless dude who isn't even into me. Hot damn. Yes, please. I was fantasizing about all kinds of dirty things during the tokenesque journey back to my car. It dawned on me very quickly that my chances of having sex in the near future had increased from 0% to whether or not Mike's car could survive the drive to my place if we were ever decide to hang out again. I looked up local mechanics and tow trucks just in case. I made a special trip to Safeway the following day to purchase condoms. I found a shopping basket and headed toward the aisle where I assumed condoms were kept. My anxiety reminded me that I am not mentally or socially equipped to make a purchase of just condoms, even if I paid for it through self-checkout during the mid-afternoon lull I was strategically counting on. Discretion, modesty, and decades of sexual shame directed at women prompted me to first wander through the produce section. I actually needed bananas and grabbed a few cucumbers, carrots, and then tossed in a package of pre-made guacamole, a box of brown sugar Pop-Tarts, and a few things to reduce the phallic-shaped objects piling up in my basket to further conceal the condoms. Dating is hard. That's what she said. I grabbed a box of a dozen condoms feeling optimistic and proceeded to argue silently, as to not draw attention, with this register that scanned items were already placed in the bagging area. Why is this still a thing? Fix this. I got home and unpacked the reusable shopping bag only to realize the condoms were not in the bag. I looked around the kitchen and the space near my door where I dropped stuff and piled up shoes. Nothing. I checked the car next because what I lack in parking skills, I make up for in taking turns too fast when driving alone. Like I don't know if I want to live or die and I need those little moments I'm not sure if the tires are going to stay on the ground. I feel a little lift or a slide and know, because I'm close to death, that I'm alive and like it. But the condoms were nowhere to be found. The receipt confirmed I paid for them. I was frustrated because I spent like $40 just to buy condoms and I didn't even get them home. If nothing else, I am a bee on a budget and I can't afford to go through that ordeal again. Reason told me to call the store. Reason is an a-hole. The call went like this. Thanks for calling Safeway. This is Timmy, or some other teenage-specific names adults never have. How can I help you? Yeah, hi, I just went through self-checkout and got home, and one of the items I purchased didn't make it home with me. Is there anything I could do? Oh, sure, I could check to see if you left it over there, he said, with the professional level of enthusiastic charm that is required for bullshit customer service calls. We usually keep stuff on the side when people forget things. What's the item? This is the part of the sitcom where Jack Morris pauses life at Bayside High School and speaks directly to the audience, telling them how I am about to heck everything up. Jim Halpert is making that face at the camera. Classic horror movie music starts playing at an ominously increasing volume that everyone but me and the fisherman from Jaws can hear. Boisterous women in movie theater audience are yelling, "Hang up the phone, you dumb bee!" This is real life, and I can't hear them. I imagine if I could, their cries would haunt me like Clarice and the Screaming Lambs. Plus, I am masochistic, or a moron. Possibly both. Yeah, I say in my almost Bill Lumbergh tone. It was condoms? The pitch of my voice rose as I spoke the last word like a question, like I wasn't sure if I wanted to say it. I didn't. Timmy tried to put the call on hold before he started giggling. He was not successful. I am on hold. This is the part of the sitcom where Zach Morris pauses Bayside High. Jim and the shark from Jaws have teamed up and are both making that face through the office blinds. A woman screams, clapping between words, "Hang up the phone!" SpongeBob SquarePants comes to my defense, mocking their pleas for sanity, leaning forward, hands on their hips, eyes bulging. "Hang up the phone!" I don't. Timmy returned to the call after a long enough pause to tell every employee in the store that some girl is on the phone because she lost her condoms and doesn't have the self-respect/budget to just eat the $12 and move on with her life, and she is actually calling the store. He is pleased to finally have a funny story to tell the girl in his math class he has a crush on her for years. "Hi, I don't see any," he hesitates like he's searching for the word on Ask Jeeves in 1998. The page eventually loads and he continues, "Condoms over there, but you could bring your receipt to the customer service desk and get another box." I regain control of my life. "Yeah, that's not gonna happen, thanks." I hung up. "Finally!" screams the frustrated, fictitious audience of my life. I then, like any sane and reasonable adult who isn't still jaded about Bezos' tax evasion, ordered a box of 36 condoms from Amazon for about the same price as the dozen at Safeway to be delivered, discreetly packaged to my door/leasing office within 1 to 2 business days. And I mean, I am still bitter about Bezos, but the annual Prime account fee already went through for the year, so to cancel now would be like giving him the money, so I might as well use it and cancel my membership before the next billing cycle. I tell myself for the 4th year in a row. I laid in bed cursing my alarm the following morning when I remembered my pre-made splurgy guacamole and jumped up to make avocado toast before my early morning class. Insert millennial joke here. Everyone laughs except the millennials rolling their eyes and drowning in student loan debt. I took the carton of eggs, bottle of Tapatio, and guacamole out of the fridge. There, on the middle shelf, hidden under the guacamole, sat a silver box containing a dozen Trojan Ultra Thins. I fought the urge to walk away from the kitchen and meet my stupid fate in the middle of the busy street. Police investigating my death would note the open refrigerator door and its unlikely contents, nodding in unison that this was the cause of my untimely but expected and understandable death. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that has happened before. Enough times that I should have checked the refrigerator before I checked the floor of my car. But again, I am a moron. Clearly in optimistic denial about the kind of person I really am. I spent the next 30 minutes scouring the internet trying to figure out if condoms are still effective after being refrigerated for 24 hours, and realized that I am the only person, out of like 8 billion of us, y'all, that has needed to know this information. And I still don't. There was a customer service phone number on the back of the box, but I heard the lamb screaming and threw the condoms away. I got slapped by my parents and they took away everything from me. So my parents caught me at my boyfriend's yesterday and they went ape shit crazy. Now, before I tell this story, keep in mind, I'm 21. Now on to the story. So before anybody asks, yes, I did live with my parents, even though I'm 21. I wanted to save up enough money for me to be able to move out of the house and be able to live in a nice place. I was almost done paying off my car, which they took away now, so it was all pointless. So I was close to moving out. My relationship with my parents has always been rocky. We pretty much don't agree on anything because they are very, and I mean very, old school. They are also strict when it comes to me going out. They're strict to the point where I wasn't allowed to go out past 10 p.m. If I did, then I would get yelled at and they would take away the truck that I was working so hard to pay off. Again, keep in mind, I'm 21. Long story short, they're super strict and very old-fashioned, so I didn't like that, which is why I was planning on moving out soon after I was done paying my car, which was in 4 months. Well, yesterday, I skipped school. I know, super bad of me, to go to my boyfriend's so that he could help me look for a place. I had told my mom that I was in school because I didn't want her to know that I was actually looking at places and trying to figure out a way for me to move out sooner. So me and my boyfriend are sitting down in my truck, when all of a sudden my dad opens my car door and slaps me across the face. Me and my boyfriend were so shocked to see my dad that we just stood there, which pissed my dad off more, and so he proceeded to slap me again and started to tell my boyfriend off. I couldn't figure out how the hell they knew I was at my boyfriend's till my mom told me that she was tracking my phone. Keep in mind, I'm 21. So I'm over here getting slapped across the face in shock, and my boyfriend is shocked as well. So we are just standing there while my parents are yelling at us. I finally woke up from my shock after a while, so I yelled at them to stop yelling like wild animals and to take me home. They did just that after they calmed down, but the walk to my parents' car was the most embarrassing thing ever because I felt like a 14-year-old getting picked up by her parents after she tried to sneak out. Again, keep in mind, I'm 21. I also felt even more embarrassed because pretty much all of his family witnesses me getting slapped by my parents. I just couldn't believe my parents had actually done that shit. Honestly, please someone answer me and tell me if this is normal. So we got home and they proceeded to tell me off and go off on me. And I just kept packing up my stuff because I just can't stay in this place after that shit happened. I mean, come on, I got slapped in public by my parents. To make matters worse though, they took away the truck that they sold to me. The truck that I worked hard for just because I want to move out and live my life on my own after what happened. Note, before any of you ask, I can't call the cops on my parents for taking away the truck because my dumbass trusted them when they told me that they would put the car under my name as soon as I was done paying it. In the meantime, the car is under their name, which is why I can't really take legal matters until I show proof that I paid for the truck, which I'm sure will not do much help. Or will it? I'm asking any lawyers out there who are reading this. So now I'm stuck in a situation where I want to move out, but I'm not sure if I should because my parents pretty much kept all of my money and I don't have a car to take me places anymore. Moral of the story is truly be careful of those who you trust because even your own family will sometimes do you dirty. Also make sure that your crazy parents aren't tracking you. Another thing I forgot to mention is that they took away my social security number and my green card. All because I didn't pay for them and I'm ungrateful. B, I was 8 when I got my green card. How the heck am I supposed to pay you? Tinder date turns into clingy and aggressive guy. Okay, true story. I had been dating a guy for several years, and after a number of tense and tough conversations regarding some issues we considered irreconcilable, we broke up. I was single for about 7 months, whole and healed. I understood why we broke up and believed that because of our mutual refusal to bend to the other person, it was for the best. I go on Tinder. I'm a busy gal, and I wanted some food and some wine and an orgasm or two. I made that pretty clear in messaging with several guys, and then the humor and personality of one guy made me agree to the date. It was fun, he had a great personality, and the conversation flowed relatively easy. I went back to his place, and we hung out for a while longer, and I ended up going home. Only dinner and wine that night. Then we agreed to meet up again, and I'm thinking about sex. I make that pretty clear. Not in a I'm gonna use you for sex way, but in a I'm on this app because I'm horny and I prefer a real penis to what I've been using for 7 months way. Still, no sex. And the second date, it got a little deeper. Not like, tell me about your familial drama and deepest fears, just who do you want to be? What do you want to do in life? I realize we are pretty far off on the spectrum of our goals, and I don't think you have to line up on goals, but at least drive or ambition. I'm thinking, he's nice, but I don't think I want this to go anywhere. So I tell him that. He says it's fine. He knows what Tinder is for, and he gets it. He thanks me for my honesty, y'all. Fast forward a week or so of texting, schedule's not lining up, still no sex. I'm talking to a few other guys on Tinder, and then my ex after 7 months of running into each other for work-related stuff. We don't work together, but people we work with each of us. In the occasional text, he asked if I need any help moving. A mutual friend mentioned I'd asked for their help. He figured he would offer. Anyway, the ex can't make the move in a day, but comes the day after to help me mount my TV, set up my bed frame, and install a cat door. He was a little weird when he got there, but it was fine. And then, randomly, in the middle of us mounting the TV, he tells me that he's done a lot of thinking. He's talked to his closest friends and his dad about it. He's not big on asking for help, so that's quite the step. And he wants to know if I'm still single. He wants to take me on a date because he realized that some of the issues we broke up over either weren't issues anymore or weren't worth it if it meant he didn't get to have me in his life. Straight out of a damn rom-com this moment was. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm thinking, how is this real? People don't actually do this. You don't break up for 7 months and then get back together. I tell him I've been going on dates and there's a guy who I've been going out with specifically. It's nothing serious, but I don't feel good about just dropping him, and I don't feel good about just jumping back into a relationship we quit for good reasons. So I sent him on his way, after the rest of the installs were done, and I told him I'd think it over. I tell the Tinder guy as soon as we talk next. I'm not in the business of playing with hearts, and I don't want to feel like I'm cheating on someone, even though I'm technically dating no one. He says it's cool, he gets it. Then we do have sex. It's awful. He takes a medication that makes his parts not work all the way, and he was very porny about the whole encounter. In the let's trade positions every 2.5 seconds, and I'm gonna slap your ass hard without mentioning it, and choke you a little without mentioning it before. I faked an orgasm so it would be over, and then he said he couldn't get off without watching porn anyways. Okay, what a fun day. Tinder for the win. Several weeks go by, no sex, a few dates with each guy, lots of tough and intentional conversations with the ex. We come to an agreement. We decide a trial run of dating without sex for about a month and see if it could work. I tell Tinder guy, it's over, I'm going with the ex. He absolutely loses it. Sends me 20 texts in about as many seconds, calls me several times, and ends up telling me I'm not as strong as I think I am if I'm going back to him, as if he was an abusive asshole I fled from. Tells me I'm not even that attractive, that I'm weak-minded and pathetic. Continues texting me mean things, leaves me a very mean voicemail. Luckily, I had just moved and he only had my phone number. Probably stalked me on social media, but didn't have my old or new address. I ended up telling him that it had nothing to do with him, that I was sorry and it wasn't my intention, that we weren't even dating and there was someone out there for him, that we were better as familiar strangers. He really didn't like that and ended up telling me that he loved me and that I was the closest thing to it he'd ever met and that he would never move on. I've now been back with my ex for 8 months and we're doing great. Tinder guy has completely left me alone since the week he confessed his undying love to me, and I've moved on. I'll never date online again. I'll never recommend dating online to anyone. What a wild ride. I wish I made up that story because it caused more than a few tears and several scary nights as I lived alone at a time, and I didn't know how crazy Tinder guy really was. Maybe he'll kill my firstborn one day as retribution. Who knows? A date I will never forget. Honestly, I've never been a very open person. I've always been that super friendly and happy girl that seems like she has the perfect life, but no one really knows that deep. I think the only person who knows my entire story is my boyfriend, who is so great to me, and of course my little brother, who shared a lot of these experiences with me. There's a lot of things I have never had the courage to tell anyone, so here I am making my best effort. My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old and my younger brother was 2. This was really the beginning of everything falling apart for me. I know in this generation it's pretty common, but it was hard for a little girl who didn't understand why she had to go to mommy's 1 week and daddy's the next. I used to cry under my desk at recess and pray every night that they would get back together. My mom and I have never had a good relationship because of everything that has happened. She used to send me to school and daycare in shorts, no jacket, and sandals in the winter, not wanting my good clothes to go to my dad's. Keep in mind, I live in Canada. This is just one of the many things that led to the huge custody battle my mom started. My dad won and they settled on 50-50 custody, but my mom blamed a lot of it on me because I would email my dad telling him how much I missed him, and my mom took this as me taking his side. Of course, being so innocent, I always stuck up for her and thought everything was normal. My mom got remarried when I was 7. Her new husband was far from perfect. He supported us tangibly, but never emotionally. No matter how hard I tried, he was never proud of anything I did, and as a little girl, all I wanted was acceptance. He was also very aggressive, and we were terrified of him. My dad also had a girlfriend. She straight up neglected us. She had a child of her own who she barely had a relationship with. My dad worked night shifts as a refrigeration mechanic in order to support us, and she would lock herself in her room, refusing to talk to us when he was gone. I was around 7 or 8 years old when I started cooking dinner for my little brother and myself. I never told my dad because, again, I thought this was a normal thing. My dad was always telling me how he wishes my mom never gave up on him, and so he never gave up on his girlfriend, who he desperately believed could change for the better. Fast forward to 7th grade. I was 13 years old when my grandpa left my grandma and never told us. They had been married for about 30 years and he cheated on her. He moved out, never telling my brother and I, leaving us to think he was gone on a work trip and never came back. This was devastating, especially for me, because he was my best friend. My grandma became extremely depressed, having been with my grandpa since she was 16. We had to move in with her to help her take care of things, seeing as she had no idea how to do much. A few months later, my dad slipped and broke his ankle and then went to work and broke both arms. It was a year worth of surgeries and officially parenting my brother because my father physically couldn't. He had to quit his job because the nurse ended up being his ex-girlfriend who hated him, and there ended up being a malpractice which he didn't bother doing anything about. Being home all the time literally made him go insane. He developed so many mental health issues and ended up breaking up with his girlfriend. She was livid. She used to break into our house and we'd wake up to her doing dishes and stealing my clothes. No joke. One time we woke up to her in our shower, and when we tried to leave, she jumped on the hood of his car, butt naked. Fun times. She started hacking our phones and threatening my brother and I when my dad refused to give her his credit card information. Again, this affected his mental health and he started developing diagnosed schizophrenia and extreme paranoia, along with his previously diagnosed anxiety, depression. A date I will never forget. Honestly, I've never been a very open person. I've always been that super friendly and happy girl that seems like she has the perfect life, but no one really knows that deep. I think the only person who knows my entire story is my boyfriend, who is so great to me, and of course my little brother, who shared a lot of these experiences with me. There's a lot of things I have never had the courage to tell anyone, so here I am making my best effort. My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old and my younger brother was 2. This was really the beginning of everything falling apart for me. I know in this generation it's pretty common, but it was hard for a little girl who didn't understand why she had to go to mommy's one week and daddy's the next. I used to cry under my desk at recess and pray every night that they would get back together. My mom and I have never had a good relationship because of everything that has happened. She used to send me to school and daycare in shorts, no jacket, and sandals in the winter, not wanting my good clothes to go to my dad's. Keep in mind, I live in Canada. This is just one of the many things that led to the huge custody battle my mom started. My dad won and they settled on 50-50 custody, but my mom blamed a lot of it on me because I would email my dad telling him how much I missed him, and my mom took this as me taking his side. Of course, being so innocent, I always stuck up for her and thought everything was normal. My mom got remarried when I was 7. Her new husband was far from perfect. He supported us tangibly, but never emotionally. No matter how hard I tried, he was never proud of anything I did, and as a little girl, all I wanted was acceptance. He was also very aggressive, and we were terrified of him. My dad also had a girlfriend. She straight up neglected us. She had a child of her own who she barely had a relationship with. My dad worked night shifts as a refrigeration mechanic in order to support us, and she would lock herself in her room, refusing to talk to us when he was gone. I was around 7 or 8 years old when I started cooking dinner for my little brother and myself. I never told my dad because, again, I thought this was a normal thing. My dad was always telling me how he wishes my mom never gave up on him, and so he never gave up on his girlfriend, who he desperately believed could change for the better. Fast forward to 7th grade. I was 13 years old when my grandpa left my grandma and never told us. They had been married for about 30 years and he cheated on her. He moved out, never telling my brother and I, leaving us to think he was gone on a work trip and never came back. This was devastating, especially for me, because he was my best friend. My grandma became extremely depressed, having been with my grandpa since she was 16. We had to move in with her to help her take care of things, seeing as she had no idea how to do much. A few months later, my dad slipped and broke his ankle and then went to work and broke both arms. It was a year worth of surgeries and officially parenting my brother because my father physically couldn't. He had to quit his job because the nurse ended up being his ex-girlfriend who hated him, and there ended up being a malpractice which he didn't bother doing anything about. Being home all the time literally made him go insane. He developed so many mental health issues and ended up breaking up with his girlfriend. She was livid. She used to break into our house and we'd wake up to her doing dishes and stealing my clothes. No joke. One time we woke up to her in our shower, and when we tried to leave, she jumped on the hood of his car, butt naked. Fun times. She started hacking our phones and threatening my brother and I when my dad refused to give her his credit card information. Again, this affected his mental health and he started developing diagnosed schizophrenia and extreme paranoia, along with his previously diagnosed anxiety, depression, and ADHD. About a year later, he believed she was only threatening him with us because of him and thought hurting himself would save us. He tried to OD on his meds and ended up in the psych ward in the hospital. The doctors believe this did permanent damage to his brain. Of course, he was never the same after this. Because of the custody battle, I was always terrified my mom would take my brother and I away, and we'd never see him again if she knew anything relatively imperfect about him. So I hid everything from her, and she never knew he was in the hospital. The entire year, we stayed with my grandma on his days, and she'd drive us to the hospital to visit him. He tried so hard to spoil us and would make crafts for us to bring home every time we came to see him. This was so difficult for me because I had to go to bed every night without being able to say goodnight to him, and I had to go to my mom's the next day and lie about it. About a year and a half later, he could come home. This was a big change, and he had a new girlfriend by this time, who also ended up being crazy. Moving on about a year later, and he tried to hurt himself again, the day after my 15th birthday. This time, my brother and I were there. I remember him running up and down the stairs, angry, dazed, and refusing help. We called the police, and my brother and I hid upstairs under my bed in fear they would call Child Protective Services. Right below my room was the front door, and so we could easily hear everything. My dad refused to go with them, and they tased him to get him to cooperate. I remember his scream like it was yesterday. This was truly one of the hardest moments of my life. He ended up back in the hospital, and again, I had to lie. After 6 months, he was okay to come home. There were times where he asked me to sit in the closet until daylight because he swore someone would come hurt us. I was the only one he could talk to. My brother and grandma told him he was crazy, but I let him vent without fear of judgment. He was my best friend. He would come into my room and cry at 2 a.m., telling me how much he loved me and how sorry he was for putting me through so much. His happier days, he would come to my room and we'd bond over music. That was our thing, trying to impress each other with our new or old rap and R&B music we think we'd like. He supported every single thing I did, and as he could come to me without fear of judgment, I could do the same with him. He tried so hard, he was honestly the best dad I could have asked for. Yes, he put me through a lot, but I would do it over again if I could. November 10th, 2017, a date I will never forget. I was 17, turning 18 in 3 months to the day. I get to my dad's and my grandma is sitting with all my uncles on the couch. They all look devastated and I don't understand why. I put forms in my stomach and I start panicking, asking where my dad is. I start running around the house, hoping to find him sleeping in one of the rooms, to no avail. The words, "I'm so sorry, your dad passed away this morning," along with the crack in my grandma's voice and tears in her eyes that follows, burns in my memory. My brother instantly starts screaming and bawling in pain, but I try not to react to make sure he's okay. I can't help but to start screaming myself. I collapsed to the floor and began rocking back and forth. I remember sitting up and saying, "You're joking, right?" about 10 times, hoping it was just some cruel joke. After that night, I became numb to the feeling. I couldn't cry. I went to the funeral a few days later with a straight face. I was so hurt that I couldn't cry no matter how I felt. My best friend was gone, and it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever been through. His crazy new girlfriend accused me of not caring when he passed because I wouldn't give her his stuff, and then didn't show up to the funeral, proving how much she really cared. On God, I almost fought her. I ended up telling my mom everything about his mental health, to which she started resenting me for hiding for so long. This pretty much ruined our relationship, which is the reason I moved out, and with my current boyfriend about 6 months ago. Side story, I had a different new boyfriend at the time who came to the funeral with me. A week later, I caught him cheating on me. I'm now 18, and it has been almost 2 years since he passed. I moved out of my mom's because of our relationship. I live with my boyfriend, who I met in April 2018. Thankfully, I had an amazing support group who helped me get back on my feet. I'm attending university in the fall, have started my own small business, and am working full-time. Instead of allowing my devastation to victimize me, I use them to motivate me. We all have rough patches, but I am confident that as long as you are motivated and persistent in succeeding, you can, through anything.
Crossroads. I always remember how our walking you home started. It was on the evening after a final term exam we gave together, and I did not want to let you go home alone, as you always do. Surprisingly, you let me. Unlike the other days when I'd keep on pestering you two. It had opened up the pathway to a regular happening in our lives, where I'd take you home every day or even accompany you from your home. Even though it has been many months since we last got to walk together again. But just for the sake of today, I wanted to experience it again, to walk on that path again. The last few times, it used to start from the plinth of the Fine Arts Building, where you and I would sit for hours and talk under the eerie evening light or the golden afternoon. Then you would get up, say your mother is going to kill you if you delay any longer, and from the path behind the building, our journey would start. The sodium golden lights on the road would always light up as soon as we would start, as if a cluster of fireflies to lead us through our regular path into the night. On our way, there would be so many crosswalks to go through, even a busy crossroad just before your house. You never could cross roads properly, and it would always be my responsibility to lead you safely to the other side. Sometimes you would hold my hand or my shirt's cuff while crossing if you felt too afraid or overwhelmed by the traffic. I would always pull you through no matter what. Then, we would go on walking, and our shadows would get closer than our bodies. Maybe I will try to slide my hand into yours as well, wouldn't I? It is raining right now, and I do not have an umbrella. The raindrops fall on my head and slide through my scalp, mixing with sweat on my forehead, but I don't mind as I walk. Even if I had an umbrella, I would always give it to you, because it is embarrassing to walk under the same umbrella. Even after 2 years of being together, it was always so awkward and embarrassing. But right now, my scarred feet hurt like hell. No, I still want to walk with you. So I do, and so I will. Why not? After all, I walked with you for almost 7 kilometers, didn't I? When did feet ache ever matter? You would vent at me for walking with my shoes rubbing the ground. But right now, I do not really know where you are. You might be on a car going to or from home, or you might be somewhere else, to find somebody else. Oh, hey, that girl looks like you. Hey, it could be you. Oh, no, it isn't. Would you call me if you saw me? Would you even recognize me after so many months? Please tell me your memories of me have not faded yet. Oh well, it does not matter. I will just pretend that you are walking beside me. That is better, isn't it? Getting drenched with me, passing that familiar burger stand, right after that tall building that we always make fun of. You're so quiet, so maybe I'll just sing La Vie en Rose to you. It will help, won't it? Remember, I did sing that on the night when I first realized whatever I did or tried to do was not really enough, didn't I? Even though we were both broken, I had to let you know somehow that it will be all right, didn't I? Oh no, it's already the dark intersection. I stopped my pace. I don't want you to go right now. Why not just a few more minutes? What will happen if you go home just a bit late? You're going to be gone forever, so just take the time before you do. If I could be reborn and reborn, I would live this moment again and again and walk on. But I can't, can I? So? But no, you insist, you have to go. You convince me you have to leave, and it's already been too late. It is already far beyond what you could stay for. But I do not want to let go of your hands. I do not want to leave you out of my sight. But well, finally, I have to accept it. We start walking again, slower than before, and I can make best use of the time by trying to embarrass you as much as I can, saying cliché, cringe romantic things, or trying to read your mind to guess what you're thinking right now. You don't say anything, again, and I realize I cannot really seem to read you anymore. Before I can say anything again, the crossroads come like a car running the red. When we cross the crosswalk, you go straight forward, where your house is, and I go left, onto my bus stop. But there are so many cars and buses and trucks on the busy crosswalk today, much more than any other time, and crossing it is so difficult. I can't get over to the other side so easily, so I try to hold on to your hand. I look at you to tell you that I love you for the last time, because I won't be able to say it again when you go home. But where are you? I search for you here and there, but you've already crossed the road. Thinking back my past 20 years, I just want to write them down. My name is Claire, from C. I would like to be clear, but English is not my mother tongue. I'm 20 years old. February 14th is my birthday. I was born in a little city. It's sort of next to the country's north boundary. I have an older sister and a little sister. Yes, my family only has one male, who is my father. I'll start from as much earlier as I can remember, as possible. Most things only have some pieces left in my mind. As time goes on, it will have more detail. The earliest thing I can remember is when I was 4 years old. My parents both were people who sold wholesale vegetables. As my thought, they were really busy at the time. Every day they woke up very early and brought me to the stall. Small, crowded place. They worked very hard. They were young and energetic. In other words, they were consuming themselves. One thing I remember is that I was hanging out with my friend, passed by a supermarket, and we walked in and grabbed a pack of milk and just drank it. I was too small to know I have to pay. Staff there wouldn't let us go till our parents found us in a hurry after 2 hours, perhaps. This is fresh in my mind because they were so angry and worried about us, while I have absolutely no idea what happened. We were poor, like really very poor. Can't even afford extra clothes or a good meal. By the way, when I was 4, my older sister is a blur in my mind, and my little sister wasn't even born yet. So when I was old enough, I started to go against her. I wasn't doing what she asked, no matter what, so it was kind of extreme. Whenever I didn't want to do what she asked of me, she always made me feel guilty. So I just ignored. I said my family, just normal, and my parents are working very hard, so I'll do some tiny things to let them feel at least relax. 'Cause we can do nothing about their work. For example, when I didn't want to mop the floor, she would say, "They're so tired from working outside. They come back and they see their house so dirty." And I'll feel like it's my fault. I don't talk to my big sister much for a long time. She always has a way to get me pissed off. Maybe I'm too judgmental towards her, but sometimes what she said is really annoying. And I don't like arguing, so I won't talk to her unless I have to. But she's a talker. Her words are plentiful sometimes. I do feel lonely, and I want to go to crowded places, 'cause I want to meet new people and new stuff. An understanding or comfort of what I'm looking for. I'm not a good talker. Don't have any move, just as things go on. I'm eager to be understood, and have someone who can really be with me when I get upset. But I can't find that. I can't be with or close with the same person for too long. At the start, I would have tried my best for that person, but I can't be straightforward with my thoughts. On the contrary, I always want people to care about me, my tiny world, or implied meaning. You can guess. That's basically impossible. So I wouldn't try to explain or discuss anything, but my self-defense starts to build. I like new things, 'cause new people means new me, new experience. I don't like to talk about myself or even don't like to argue or anything. So even sometimes I meet something unfair, I would self-digest, but it's just getting bigger now. I can't digest it myself. There will have to be something I can figure out. So at the moment, maybe I'll leave it. But next time when something happens, I have to self-digest, the past wouldn't come through again. I have strong self-defense. Like if one day I feel you're not really wanting to understand me, I wouldn't ask anything. But the wall between us is building. I would fade. I remember I had a really good friend when I was in primary school. Like we talked about everything and we were always together. But I don't know, I just got tired in the end and tried to keep pushing her away, get her away. She didn't do anything wrong. I just felt suffocated. But people come and go, right? I'm a totally contradicting person. I can't stand people so close to me, but can't even understand me. I was longing to go somewhere very far on my own, like what I said before, meet new people, new experience. So I started to collect relative information about it. But I can't just travel. So I found a volunteer thing. You can get a certificate, which can be very helpful for a job in the future. It also has to be inexpensive. So I chose India. I stayed there for 6 weeks. They covered accommodation and food. All I needed to pay was project fee and a plane ticket. About the project I chose, I didn't think too much. They all have a very similar introduction, so I chose randomly. It's about teaching kids English. To be honest, I prefer to be with kids or pets than older adults. So I made an interview, and I went there. In my case, that would be totally alone space. Probably at a dog and in a beautiful countryside that would inspire me. You may notice that surroundings will influence me a lot. But every time when I want to face them, I would get so nervous. Sometime I was thinking maybe I'm a control freak. 'Cause if things out of expectation, I would be like, don't know what to do. I don't even know if I'm really in love with traveling and meeting new things. Maybe that's just an excuse to escape. I'm always chasing something. Currently, I'm not. And put my expectations on that, but the truth is, even though I get eventually sick of things, it won't change too much. I don't know what is wrong with me. You know, I always feel better in places not so familiar to me. That's why I only send letters to foreigners and only join foreign communities. Different languages and culture will minimize my sensitivity, and I would rather travel alone. I may never travel with others. Even travel, I prefer to go to other countries far from mine. The really strange loss prevention guy. I'm bored. Thought I'd tell my story about a creep I had to work with when I was a teenager. I won't give a name to the store, but I'm sure you will figure that out easy. It's a lower-end Walmart that usually hosts a lower-end pizza chain inside. Well, I worked in the pizza part at 18 years old. It was probably my 3rd week at the job when the loss prevention guy Chad comes over and orders a pizza. I'm ringing him up when he stares at me for a while and he says, "Are you the new girl?" I smile and nod. He tells me I should follow him to his office. I kind of look back at my manager confused and my manager tells me it's okay, he will cover my spot. So I followed Chad to the back of the store. On the way there, he is pointing out all cameras in the store, like on the ceiling, and explaining to me how those are just the ones you see. There are the ones in places you would never expect you are being watched. I just nod and say, yeah, cool, wow, because I could have cared less and thought there was not too much purpose for me to go in this little tour or know these things. We make it back to his office, and it's tiny, just a wall half filled, with monitors and a couple computers, a large desk, and his chair. He closed the door, skirted past me, and sat on his chair, and I stood by the door because there was nowhere else to go. He starts talking about his job and what he is supposed to do there, and how that included even watching the pizza employees, because the employees are known for stealing slices of pizza without paying. He tells me a story about how just a few weeks before I was hired, they fired 3 guys at the same time on the spot, because the day before they ate the extra breadsticks on their lunch and didn't pay for it. He gets really stern for a second and asks me seriously, "Have you ever stolen anything before?" I start to get really serious, back in a particularly snarky and sarcastic way. "Oh, no, never, Chad. I have never and I will never steal anything." I was actually a career criminal at this point in my life. The only reason why I was working that job is because I moved across the country for a fresh start, because a few years before I was a druggie and funded my habits through a great deal of theft. Eventually, I was slapped with an assault with a deadly weapon, but I got those charges cleared, and everything eventually went off my record. I knew there was no way he would know any of this. My record was squeaky clean at this point. He just laughs and says, "Yeah, right, I don't believe that." I just played along. I'm a really good person. I would never ever do something like that. It's yucky. He just stares at me and says, I think you're hiding something. I'm like, okay, and stay quiet. He says, you moved here to this small town from a big city. And when I asked around about you, turns out you moved here without any family either. For a young girl like you, that's really suspicious. I think you're running from something. I just shrug and say I'm independent. However, starting to get really annoyed that I'm being grilled for no reason by a rent-a-cop. He says he wants to show me some things. He turns around and starts explaining some of the tech behind the security cameras, showing me some real-time video of the store. He points out these two girls walking around, and he goes on to explain on how he can zoom in and be able to read what is on their phones. And he then chuckles and says, say hi to your boyfriend from me, which I can only imagine meant he was reading my phone screen when I was on my break. He starts to say how he has been watching me from the security camera, as he does with all new employees, and says I have strange habits. I just stay quiet. He pulls up past footage, like remembers the date off the top of his head, and it's me walking into the bathroom. I'm like pretty creeped out at this point, but I stay quiet. He says, this is the only time I have seen you go to the bathroom since you have worked here, and you work late and overtime. Don't you have to go more often? I just say, bladder of steel. He goes, uh-huh. Like he doesn't believe me. He then pulls up footage of me talking to some guy on my break, and I say snarky, oh look, there's my boyfriend you want me to say hi to. He then pulls up some things on his computer, and he explains how all the employees are given a number that they can use in the store at checkout for an employee discount. I already knew this because I was given my number and have just been using it frequently. He explains to me how he can even track employees' purchases, the date and exact time. He puts in my employee number, which was written down on a post-it note, next to him, and pulls up my purchase history in front of me. He says, I have learned you have quite the sweet tooth. Then he says, let's look at your last purchase, made at midnight, just the other day. He says, oh, look at this. Tampons and pads, and you are still hardly using the bathroom. I was major creeps out and said I had to get back to work, and I just left and hurried back to my station. It left a really bad feeling in my stomach, and I stopped using my phone on break or buying anything from the store. He didn't come around for his lunch break for a while, until a few weeks later, when he decides that he wants to come back behind the restaurant and help us kids out, because he said he worked in some fancy restaurant way back when, and he wants to teach us a thing or two. I found it really annoying for him to be in my way and feeling he needed to teach me how to do everything. He always has to be working right next to me and correcting everything I did, but our manager didn't care, so I couldn't do anything about it. He was always asking me really personal questions about my life, trying to know more about my past, how he couldn't find me on social media, and even went as far as to ask me once if I was having sex with my boyfriend. He would even walk over to the restaurant after my lunch break to remind me to remember to pay for my pizza slice before I go home, only to walk back to his office. He has even called to remind me on the store phone. I finally had enough when one day my boyfriend got let off work early, and he decided to stop by my work and grab a large pizza for us to have for dinner, and give me a ride since I was getting off of work soon as well. Well, Chad so happened to be helping in the restaurant that day and saw me wave hi to my boyfriend and tell him I'm getting off work in about 20 minutes while a coworker rang him up. I went to the back and started finishing up some dishes when Chad comes back there and confronts me. He says, "So that's your boyfriend, huh?" I'm like, "Yep," and try to ignore him. He says, "Well, I don't really like him coming into my store, I don't like the way he looks, and I don't trust him, so you can't bring him around anymore. He started asking for my boyfriend's first and last name and date of birth and all that. I just said, I don't think you have that kind of power. He walked away. I went home, and while my boyfriend and I were eating dinner, I get a call from the store manager saying Chad did an investigation on the people I bring into the restaurant as guests, and that one of them has piercings and tattoos and long hair, my boyfriend, and even a DUI. His father did, but not my boyfriend. And the store manager told me until my boyfriend gets a haircut and dresses more nicely, he can't come into the store anymore. I was shocked. So shocked. I just said, okay. I hung up and thought about it more. This was a big box stores. Hundreds and hundreds of customers in and out every day. And they banned my boyfriend because he looks too punk. I walked into the store manager's office the next day and quit. And I flipped off one of the security cameras on my way out because I knew Chad was watching me. I couldn't take another second of that creep. Most definitely one of the strangest experiences I have ever had anywhere, at a job or with anyone, really.
How religion took 16 years from my life. It feels weird to do this, but I wanted to tell my story to people who might understand. I'm not professionally diagnosed, but I definitely have deep emotional and mental problems. Please don't tell me to seek out professional help. I want to have therapy so bad. I know that I need help, but for now, it's not possible. Because if I would ask my parents, they would tell me I should pray to God and He would fix the phase I have. But I assure you, as soon as I get the opportunity to seek out professional help, without my parents knowing I'm going to. As long as that is possible, I'm trying to figure out what is going on with me on my own. I did so much research during quarantine because I started to question my sense of self, especially my identity, and ended up having an internal crisis. I thought my issues weren't that deep because I never was physically abused and technically everything in my life was fine. I had clothes, food, and an overall loving family on the surface. And I played it down because I thought someone like me can't call their experiences trauma because I was never hit nor bullied. Generally, people like me because I was a massive people pleaser and still do it, but it's gotten better. Or at least they were nice to me. My parents supported me, helped me out when I needed money for something, and now there are two parts of me fighting. The one part that knows exactly how hecked up I really am, and the other part that tells me I'm exaggerating, that I should stop overthinking and stop being ungrateful. I'm torn, and I hope to find at least one person who kind of understands me. I feel like no one could ever get me, because my trauma doesn't feel validated. Even though I found out that the part of the brain that is responsible for physical pain is also responsible for emotional pain. It still feels like I don't deserve to be heard because on the surface, everything was perfectly fine. And even though I talked to friends about it and they really helped me, they still told me to be grateful that I was well liked and no one directly hurt me. But I can't. I can't look at the positive aspects and live normally. It affects my life. It affects the person I am. It shaped me. I can't concentrate, and it got worse and worse with time. I have emotional outbursts that I learned to hide. I'm constantly on guard and don't feel safe in my house because I constantly think my parents could find out something that I'm hiding from them. I can never relax no matter where I am, except when I'm at my boyfriend's house and I know no one is going to be at home for a longer period of time. I feel like I'm not worth it. I feel ugly on the inside and outside, and I hate myself for coping by overeating. I'm not obese nor anything near it, but if I continue to eat how I eat without going to the gym, it could happen. I feel like I don't have to be the main mother figure to my sisters because my mom is so emotionally detached that I don't want them to think that what she does is real love. But the worst thing is how distant I feel from my emotions and myself. Does a myself even exist? Can I ever be it? I feel numbed out and drained, even though I do nothing all day but distract myself as good as I can. I feel like I never achieved anything and that I never will. Everything is so overwhelming and so hard to do, even the littlest homework or task. That's why I have a pile of work in my emails, and in the back of my mind that stresses me the hell out. But I just can't get myself to do it unless it has a deadline. And even then, I tend to it last minute. I feel weak, stupid, and misunderstood, and I think to myself, if that continues, all my good marks are going to drop, and then my parents are going to be a problem even on the surface. I'm doing my A-levels, class of 2021, in Germany. I was born here, right now, and I just feel like I can't do it, and it is required from me that I get a prestigious degree, even though I would rather pursue a singing career. That was the longest introduction I ever wrote, but it needed to be at least written down somewhere. So what is the big deal? What am I complaining about? I'll try to create a chronological order and to remember everything crucial, but I yesterday realized that I'm missing blocks of time in my memories, even from recent times. It all started before I was born. My parents found each other through friends and got together. My mom lived in Kazakhstan before moving to Germany. I still don't exactly know why. And my father lived in Siberia before moving to Germany. His and my uncle's parents wanted to prevent them from having to fight in a war zone. And so they happened to live in the same city and they met. They got together and married. Then their neighbors invited them to go with them to a Russian-German evangelical church, and they ended up being members. Then I was born and everything was perfect. I was in church every Sunday from the moment my mother could leave the hospital. I never knew anything different. And as soon as I was able to be separated from my mother for 2 to 3 hours, I was with other children my age while the adults were attending the big service. And then the indoctrination started. I don't remember much from my time in church, or the cult as I call it now, from the time before I was 12. I only remember my time in school, which is very odd to me, but what do I know? I just remember being a people pleaser from the start and everything they taught us, but there aren't many clear memories. I was good at being a people pleaser. Now it's easy for me to approach people and connect on a surface level, but at what price? It's scary to me that my memories are so blurry. I don't even know who I was friends with or if I even had friends before the age of 10. I just remember that I wanted to be perfect in God's eyes. I wanted to be the perfect example of a girl who loves Jesus with all her heart. I wanted people in church to look at me and think I will make it far in my faith. And I achieved that, I think. But now I hate my past self for caring so much. So what were we taught there? God created the world, Jesus died for my sins and resurrected after 3 days. The Bible is the only truth and the only way I must live. Everything else is the devil's work. And even though they didn't say it in particular, but that our church is the only one to teach the real truth, and that every other church doesn't have God in it and immediately leads to hell and damnation. We were taught that the secular world was highly dangerous, and as soon as we were not following one of God's, the church's, rules, we were open for demons to attack us. And to make it short, you could sin by thinking something. So we were taught to somehow control our thoughts, but give full control to God over every little aspect in our lives, because everything is predestined and we don't have control about anything anyways. But we're still responsible for our actions somehow, and we still have a free will granted from God. While writing this, I really understand how contradicting this is, and it was a core belief of mine. When an adult who looked after you as a toddler tells you this, and there are 500 people who all believed it wholeheartedly, you try to justify it until you really can't anymore. And then everything shatters. Losing faith is something that was so deeply intertwined with your whole existence. It's like part of you just died. Even though you know how ridiculous it was believing in it, and you still feel stupid for not realizing it earlier. So in a nutshell, everything bad you do is because you're not saved. Because for someone who is really saved, it's physically impossible to sin no matter how, and automatically fully your fault. But when you achieve something, it's because God did it. You're never capable of doing or achieving something on your own. You're even unable to think the right, good way. So you're basically nothing and unimportant. But when you come to God, He gives you a purpose He specifically chose for you. You matter to Him. You're worthy of His love. And even though we were taught He is forgiving to everyone and almost everything, if you only follow Him everywhere He leads you. Another bizarre contradiction they teach little children: you're nothing, but with God, you're worthy. It makes me unbelievably mad that there are gradually more and more children who grow up believing this, who are taught that demons, the devil, and hell are around every corner to take them and torture them for eternity if they slip up one tiny bit. That's why I cried myself to sleep for years, begging God to forgive me for saying shit one time, or thinking in my head that I wanted to kiss a boy, not speaking of being attracted to a girl. Because of course anything than straight marriage within my church is wrong. Yes, I was expected to have a boyfriend within church, and if he was in the world, I had to convince him to go to church, and he has to love God. We weren't allowed to date before 17, and of course, no premarital sex, but they took it further to prevent it at all costs. You weren't allowed to be alone in a room with your significant other before marriage, so nothing could possibly happen. Holding hands and short hugs were allowed when engaged. So if you grew up there, find a boyfriend and get engaged as fast as possible, because if you fall in love, it must be in God's plan. Because you want to F and then marry as fast as possible, you have to be together at least a year and then be engaged for at least half a year to have your first kiss ever, if you weren't sinful, in front of everybody, and when the pastor says, you may kiss the bride. We were taught that God wants us to be pure and learn to value our partner's personality. They told us girls that if we had a sexual relationship before marriage, you would never know if he really loves you or just wants your body. And that every guy outside church would never love us for our personalities. Another contradiction. These young adults rush into marriage not because they think, wow, I really value my partner as a person. No, they're sex-driven teenagers lying to themselves, which is absolutely not their fault, of course. No one is appreciating anything, and if they are, they're very lucky, because there were maybe 15 people in your age range that you could end up with. Girls were also taught to save themselves because we are like chewing gum, and if you're all chewed up, your godly future husband wouldn't want you, would he? We were told we were pure glasses of water, and if we sleep around before marriage, or even with only one person, every time dirt would fall into our pure water, and no one wants to drink dirty water. But the one thing that stuck with me that my mother, and later on, more older woman, told me was every time you sleep with a man, he takes part of your soul with him. That's why there should be only one guy from the start, so that you don't end up losing your soul. The thought of that terrified me to the core, and I believed it. Now I know it's bullshit, but it was in my head constantly for 5 or 6 years. We were told to cover up so guys don't want sin with their eyes and thoughts. Knee-length skirts and shorts were allowed, and I always hated how they looked on me. And you had to cover your belly and your shoulders at all cost. Cleavage was obviously not allowed, and so weren't tight clothes, only skinny jeans, not leggings, especially when you had a little bit more chest. And if you dared to show a tiny bit of skin, no matter how hot summer was, even if it was accidental, you'd get in trouble. I was in that godforsaken building almost every day, except for Wednesdays where we would meet up with our local little group of girls. There was a leader a few years older than us, and I'm glad mine wasn't as controlling as others and didn't force me too much to work in different groups in church and discuss what our beloved, I could vomit remembering him and his sleazy and narcissistic behavior, pastor taught us on Sunday. I was involved in worship, and my love for singing kind of saved me because that's the only thing I really did because I myself wanted it. I danced, which was okay. It was workout for me and not dancing for God when I think about it. I looked after toddlers once a month during service with other women. I was in the theater group, and when there was an event for teenagers, I was responsible for leading a group of other teenagers to organize it, so everything was done and standing where it belongs. I liked organizing, so I was lucky they just positioned me there, but it was still hella stressful. And I played the piano, which I didn't really enjoy. So there were the basics. I was heavily involved. With 12, you move from being with children to the big service, and you're finally old enough to be part of all the cool things the teenagers did. But then you're also constantly stressed out, which worsened every year because obviously school got harder, but also the church demanded more and more, and suddenly you were thrown into highly responsible tasks, which drained you. When I was 14, I started constantly having headaches. I started drinking coffee because I was exhausted from not being able to sleep, being stressed out, and constantly worried that someone would find out my secrets. And now I need a very strong one for it to work. Because in school, I was someone else. I had a different name in my school, my real name. In church, the pastor required my parents to introduce me with a very faraway nickname from my real name because it sounded like a name in the Bible that an evil person had, and if I'd be called that, it would curse me. I did and said what I wanted. It increased gradually because I still tried to be myself, which you could be in church. No. In school, but obviously couldn't do that because no one can. I thought I was being myself in school, and maybe that was myself when I was 14, but I still was the most severe case of a people pleaser. And I always ended up in dependent, toxic friendships because I could never say anything against them. I had no one else who was close to me, so that also hurt me even though I didn't notice at the time. People abused my kindness because in church they told us we had to be nice, and I could do that at least. So I held on to being nice to everyone, helping everyone, and inviting people to come to church who were remotely close to me, which still embarrasses me the most, but you get in trouble when you're not inviting people. I'm so glad I was in a very accepting class. No one was ever really bullied, just mocked for a few things maybe, which I was, for being in that church. And they told me early on, it's a cult, you believe in crazy shit, stop going there. But we were taught that people who were afraid of the truth always say that. School was kind of a safe place for me, even if I had toxic friendships and got hurt a few times, because we live about 25 kilometers away from church, the cult, and nobody I knew from there could see me. And even though we were taught that God could see everything and is always reading our thoughts, I didn't feel very watched. I was scared shitless when I wore something in school we weren't allowed to wear in church, and I thought I saw someone I knew, so I felt better in school than at home. And that's why my definition of home is something entirely different than that of people who grew up in an emotionally safe home. So what was living in my home like? I'm the first daughter of 3, and therefore my father's precious firstborn. I learned really fast that just keeping quiet, smiling, and doing what I'm told is the best way to avoid any more stressful situations. I hated every form of confrontation, and I still do. When I was young as 3, my father threatened to hit me with a belt, and did it a few times, but I stopped misbehaving or questioning, so no one yelled at me anymore, and no one told me to stand in a corner without looking. So I just learned to not show my emotions at all at home, because emotions cause trouble and distress. They also told us that. God and our own intellect, which is controlled by God, must lead us. Emotions come out because of the devil. My father was in control of everything, and to this day, he is still extremely sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, etc. You name it. And he still thinks I have exactly the same opinions as him. He is very critical of my boyfriend, but because he puts on a facade in front of my father as I do, my father likes him. My parents, more my father, still don't want me to have anything premarital, even though they are less strict than before. So yeah, I can't ask for birth control because then they would not let me see my boyfriend. As I said, my father is very controlling and has a very high opinion of himself. Because he is providing for our family, he doesn't have to do anything regarding the house. This is on the women and the 4 girls in the house, because that's what God made us for. Popping out babies, cleaning, and cooking. But I still have to get a degree and a high-paying job. And then I ask myself, what do you want from me? What? In church, we learn that you have to find a job that gives you enough time to be as active as possible in church, while giving birth to as many children as possible and managing your whole household completely alone, because your husband is by God's law above you and there to lead you. How remarkably generous of you to lead me, because I can't decide on anything ever due to always thinking I don't have control anyways. That's why I need to plan everything obsessively and always know and control what's going on. I idolized my father until the realization that we don't have any emotional bond slowly reached me until it hit me hard. I had to organize my phone a certain way and delete messages so in case he would want to go through it, he wouldn't find anything. He wanted me to be his perfect show daughter who has good marks and serves God with all of her existence, and he really did that. In front of him, I am what he wants me to be. I don't know what my mother wants. She just does what my father tells her and silently agrees to what he has to say. Maybe I learned to behave in that way because she did. I'm honestly sorry for her because she never had a chance to study anything that could make her independent because of moving to Germany at 17 or 18 and not being able to speak the language very well. I could cry because no matter how brutal this sounds, her life is over in a way. She is what I never want to be. Whenever they told us how our future will look like, I had a kind of panic that I never felt before. At the time, I suppressed that, but when I think back, my heart rate goes up and I feel like I need to run as fast as I can. And that's why I hate to be dependent on someone. But weirdly, I still end up in situations where I'm highly dependent. Another thing that I can maybe explain now is my reaction to my grandfather's death. He was more of a father to me than my own, and his wife's home, which I also deeply love, felt safe. When I was 11 years old, my grandmother, my grandfather's wife, passed away because of cancer. And I was never allowed to see her while she was sick, nor to attend the funeral. And in that time, I already saw my grandpa rarely. When my parents told me my grandma passed away, I cried one time. I know that I was sad, but I somehow can't recall my immediate emotions from that day. And I thought I'm glad that I still have my grandpa, but he passed away 3 months later, and I wasn't able to see him during those months. When my father, emotionlessly, told us that his father also passed away, I felt nothing. I didn't cry, no reaction at all, and then I didn't think about it for years. But when I was 14, all of a sudden, all of the emotions I should have felt when I was 11 crushed me harder than ever. It was like reliving the day I was told he was gone forever for almost a year, and I was so confused. Why now? Why didn't I feel anything back then? Because my brain was already way too stressed for an 11-year-old and just didn't process properly. Then 3 years later, something triggered my memories and the horrors began. When I was 16, it hit me again because I found out he committed suicide through my cousin. Back to the cult. So am I still there? No. My parents realized how manipulative literally everything about it was, and without telling anyone there, childhood friends I grew up with included, we went there one last time, and on Sunday, the 23rd of September, 2018, we drove away and never came back. And many others left too. We still meet every Sunday, and I still sing there because I don't want to confront my parents. I really don't want to be there because every time we're there, I'm not really there. I'm just a shell that moves around. During the preaching, which a few men do in turns, I'm always completely zoned out and can only concentrate for a bit if I really try. I don't know what that is or that means, but I absolutely hate it because I can't control it. And sometimes I'm just sad for no reason. I still can't sleep and still get a massive headache and can't stand up properly without strong coffee. I still eat too much stuff. I really shouldn't. And I feel bad for every little bit I eat, but I can't stop. And it also affects all of my relationships, especially with my boyfriend. He sometimes doesn't understand, but he still comforts me and is patient, which I'm really grateful for. And something that comes to mind only now is that my father used to completely lose it when I had a bad mark. I was afraid to come home and always started crying before even telling him. And then he would shout even more, beat the table with his fist and tell me to stop crying. Now I can control if I'm going to cry or not when something upsets me, and if I want to show my emotions or not. Being a very good liar was essential, and it still is. When my father is mad at me because I don't do the dishes, he still gets very impulsive and shames me because if he works and gives me food and clothing, it's just disrespectful to leave the dishes for too long. And when he stands beside me and doesn't stop while I do the dishes, I just nod my head and say yes. It's the only way to avoid more pain at all cost. There are these moments, but also the ones where he tries to talk to me and ask how I am, and then he tells me how he loves me, his firstborn princess. He tells me that I'm the best daughter someone could have, and that he's so proud of me. And I just smile at him and say thank you. But on the inside, I think, if you really knew who I really am and what I did that you don't have, You wouldn't talk to me anymore. He is proud of the daughter he created for himself that I still am in front of him. And also my mother tries to get closer to me after 16 years of distance and letting the church raise us. And the only thing I would tell her if I was honest for a few seconds in the midst of all the lies I protect myself with, I'm sorry, but it's too late. I don't have any emotional connection to my parents, and I never had. The first 16 years of my life were partly wasted. I felt like someone took my childhood from me. Even my memories are blurry. And I know it's technically not my parents' fault, but I want to blame them so badly. And it makes me so mad that I was born because of the church, because they convinced my father to have children. I was cursed before I even existed. And still, I can recall a few beautiful memories of things I did with my friends there. The sleepovers, summer camp, singing together, playing hide and seek in the big building. All of us connected through our fear of the dangerous outside world and hell. There is no moment in my life where I wasn't afraid that some adult could dream or feel. They taught us that God could reveal things about people to you when you have a strong connection to the Holy Spirit, that I was a dirty sinner that acted differently in school. And it was so frightening because when it's out that you messed up, you can't attend certain rituals like the Holy Communion, and that's when people know. They see that you're not taking part in it, and the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, premarital sex. When a couple did it and someone found out, it made sure by the authorities that in a week, everyone knows. And I wanted to avoid people thinking that at all costs, so I was very aware and on guard at all the time. I made sure I had a different app also open while watching Vampire Diaries on my phone, because there you could switch faster, so my mother or father, who still just burst into my room whenever they want to, would never know I would watch something the devil created. My parents and everyone in the church who was responsible for me always tried to shelter me and get anything with a bad influence away from me. But I still watched what I wasn't allowed to. The internet and myself raised me when my beliefs started to break away. People like Jenna Marble taught me things parents should teach their kids. I educated myself on so much stuff I missed out on and started to build my own opinions and morals from 14 to 16. Basic knowledge like it's okay to not believe what your parents believe was so new to me. And now I just want to move out and study something so I'm always safe. I can't wait for the day where I'm finally going to be financially independent and don't have to rely on my father. Wow, it feels so good to put that all in words. When you watch until now, you must be really, really bored. But thank you. I appreciate your attention greatly. Greatly. Greatly.
She got pregnant, but not from me. It was 2011 when me and my ex-wife, at the time girlfriend, decided to come to a different country temporarily, mostly to have an international experience, to learn languages, cultures, etc. We spent part of 2011 and most of 2012 studying languages and working, until we had to go back to our home country due to a member of the family passing away. Also at that time, we got married, but just on paper. We didn't have any parties or ceremonies since we didn't have any money to spare. Studying abroad is very expensive. During the time we spent back home, we took several steps towards building a couple's life or a family, such as refurbishing my old apartment, buying furniture. We even received several gifts from friends because they were so excited that we decided to stay. At least, that's what I thought. Rebuilding the apartment was a saga by itself. In order to be able to provide, I created from scratch a real estate agency with my mom. We worked really hard and I was working a lot, which is a good thing. Because of that, I was able to finish the apartment, bought the ex a car, and bought myself a motorcycle. We had good friends and good people around us. Besides some minor things, I was living the life. On a note here that I almost forgot, her mom, my ex-mother-in-law, helped us with the apartment, as she was also excited for us. She paid for all the cabinets and all the paint jobs. This will be important later. It was mid-2013 when she started to complain about our home country and our current life. I couldn't understand it. From my point of view, everything was great. We had a great life and a great future. But that wasn't enough for her. She wanted to go back to the country and city that we visited as students in temporary residence. At first, I refused. I had a vision, a glimpse of the future. My business was doing great, and we had our family and friends around. She wanted more. She wasn't satisfied with all that, even though she was also becoming very successful in her line of work. So she gave me an ultimatum. We either emigrate as a couple, or she would do it alone. Of course, I gave up on everything I had, packed up my stuff, and emigrated with her. Of course, it's not that simple to emigrate. Her and I were both law bachelors. Our diplomas weren't accepted for immigration. So one of us had to come as a student and the other as a worker. So we made an arrangement. I took all the money I had and paid for the travel and first semester costs, as for first expenses, furniture, etc. She transferred her car to her mom's name so she could sell it and send us the money to pay for school. She would work and I would study full time. She was doing exactly what I did for her while we were back in our home country. I was working and covering most of the expenses, and she was training and studying. But this time, I was studying. She was covering most of the expenses. But I was also helping, as I rented my apartment and still had some revenue from the agency. One of the first things we did after arriving was finding a place to live. We put some furniture in and opened a joint bank account. I'd like to take the time to also explain that I wasn't just naive. I was also very, very young at the time. She was just a half year older than I was. We found an apartment almost immediately, as we had friends living in the same building. We became door-to-door neighbors. It was great. Our friends were also a couple, and from the same country that we were from, so naturally we spent a lot of time together. The first 2 or 3 months were nice. I was studying, she was working, I was enjoying my studies. We were already talking about the future, such as next steps on the immigration process, about next steps in our life, having kids and such. I was adamant on having kids only after the whole immigration process was done, as we would be able to afford it, and our future in this country was uncertain. She agreed. During that time, we would throw some LAN parties as we were both gamers. I'd cook, we'd drink and play games. It was great. Most of our friends were gamers too, as we both used to work on a game testing company back in 2012, and she was still working the industry to that day. She invited a couple of coworkers for one of those parties. They seemed to be nice people. I even gave one of my winter jackets to one of her friends, who we'll call Dick, short for Richard, of course. Winter here is pretty intense, and Dick didn't have any winter clothes, so I gave him the spare jacket I had. From time to time, we would go out with her coworkers, all couples, except for Dick. I was never comfortable with him. I never liked him, but I would tolerate him as he was part of her group of friends. She would always complain about stuff he did or said. At this point, I started to see the signs. I started to become depressed as the distance between us grew bigger each day. I tried to fight for our marriage, but it seemed like she didn't care. The only thing that I could think about was all the bits, pieces, and situations we had to endure to get to where we were. I thought about our families, our friends, all the gifts and wishes that we received, all the good deeds from people that helped us. Why would she throw this away? My depression grew bigger. I became super focused on my studies and on my crafts. I was alone most of the time as my thoughts ate me alive. I tried everything at this point, and I was becoming exhausted. One day, she comes home after work and goes for a walk with our neighbor's wife. I knew it was coming. She broke up with me when she got back. I was never a guy that would easily cry, but I cried like a baby that day. When I was a bit calmer, I called my parents. That made me cry even more because I missed them so much. I went to bed crying, couldn't sleep, and ended up crying throughout the whole night. The next morning, I had a panic attack during class. I thought I was having a heart attack. I couldn't breathe. My vision was blurry. I could barely walk. I went to the infirmary, and there wasn't anyone there. I really thought that I was going to die that day. I laid down on the couch there and passed out. I woke up to the nurse assessing me, and I got the assurance that I was physically fine. I went home that day and stayed there, typed the divorce documents, signed it, and just stayed there, doing nothing, just thinking. That day was the very last time that I saw my ex. A few days passed by, maybe 3 or 4, and I woke up to a weird dream that I had. During my dream, my neighbor's wife was telling me that my ex was expecting a baby girl. I had another panic attack. During that same day, I found out that she was already official with Dick. A friend in common texted me the details since they both deleted and blocked me from social media. She never admitted to cheating on me to anyone, but she was already pregnant at that time, and it wasn't mine. That same day, I got a call from the bank saying that my ex signed the papers to close the account and that I needed to go there to sign it too. The bank account was empty. She even had the audacity of texting me to ask for money for rent and utilities. Besides the $60 I had in my wallet, that was all the money I had left. I was livid and desperate. I didn't know what to do. Luckily, my parents were able to send me a couple $100s, and that's what I used to move out. I offered her to buy me out of the apartment, meaning that she would buy my half of the furniture, and she got offended. We never talked again, as I was livid. I changed my phone number and deleted and blocked all means of communication with her. I was able to move out, to the worst place I ever lived in, with all my furniture using the money that my parents sent. But I have to admit, I was eating just once a day because I didn't have the money to do anything else, and I was way too ashamed of my naivete and situation to ask for more help. During that month, I noticed the number of friends I had on my social media was decreasing. I asked around and found out that for each group of friends that we had in common, she told a different story and a different lie, all to her favor, of course. They went from, he's impotent, to, I was afraid that he was going to kill me. I understood that she was trying to justify what she did to me to keep her friends and justify the cheating. Of course, it pissed me off, but what really got me flabbergasted is that some people actually believed her. People that I once considered family believed that I was capable of doing such things. It really broke my heart again. Some of our friends in common didn't buy her lies and texted me saying that it's clear what happened and I wasn't capable of the actions she was telling everyone. I was livid. I think I was never that angry before or after in my life, but in the end, I did nothing about it. I came to the conclusion that the people that believed her without talking to me were never really my friends, regardless of my feelings or consideration towards them. I also had bigger problems in my hands. How was I supposed to pay for my studies now? The time to pay up the school was coming, and I had no idea what to do. Nevertheless, my ex-mother-in-law texted me asking me to pay her up for the cabinets and paint job that she paid for in my apartment. Basically, she was asking me to pay her back for a gift, but fine, let's do it. I explained to her what was going on with me, all the details, the slander, how her daughter and I had an agreement, that I was only in this situation because of what she did to me, how she did it, and that she got all my money. And that, after hearing all of it, if she still wants to be paid, that I would find a way to pay her back even if it takes my whole life to do it. The only answer I got was, oh, never mind that then. I loved my ex-mother-in-law as a true member of my family, and I still only have positive feelings towards her. I remember it like it was yesterday, the day that a miracle happened in my life. I was actually in a calculus class trying to figure out how to pay the school, calculating what I could and could not do, when I received a message from my sister. A company that owed me money finally paid up. I had no hope whatsoever on collecting that money. They paid up the exact amount that I needed. It was during my most financially desperate time that they decided to pay. I can only consider this a miracle. What are the odds? I hope none of you ever experienced this amount of frustration, desperation, and anger that I felt ever in your lives, and I mean it. I decided to go out that weekend to celebrate with a couple of friends where I could tell them the whole story of what happened until that point. It was an interesting experience. As I was telling them, the whole bar started to listen to my story. I've never had free drinks from strangers before. That was the very first and last time. I noticed a couple of friends were really uncomfortable. One was drinking like there was no tomorrow. I asked what was going on. Then, my neighbor's wife said, I'd like to tell you something, but I promised not to tell. It was the exact situation I dreamed of. My body became cold, and I said, I think I know what you're talking about. I continued, she's pregnant, and it's a girl. How do you know? She asks. I had a dream where I dreamed of this very moment, I explained. Everyone was surprised, of course. My friend that's drinking like there was no tomorrow sighs in relief. At least I don't have to break my word. He told me that he was drinking like that because he wanted to tell me, but didn't know how. From then on, the only thing I knew is that X and Dick moved to his home country, and they were living with his parents. She didn't speak the language, but I guess she learned it by now. She indeed had a baby girl, and I know nothing more about that. I had several hardships over the past few years, but ended up graduating in winter semester of 2016 as one of the best students of that class, and I was invited to be salutatorian, which I accepted. I got a couple of jobs after school, but ended up working in the gaming industry again, where I was just promoted. I'm still waiting on my immigration process that hopefully will be done in the first semester of 2020. My story continues. I licked my wounds and have a bunch of scars, but I'll keep going, keep fighting for the bright future I know I can have. I'm much more mature now. I know who I can trust, and I know that I owe so much to my friends and family for the support they gave me. I hope you can take inspiration on this part of my story. Keep fighting and persevering as I did. My brain tumor story. My name is Brandon, and I'm from Australia. Most of my life as a teen, I was very skinny, the eat anything and not gain weight kind of skinny. and suffered from really extreme headaches to the point where I would get home and close the blinds and lay on the couch kind of headaches. I had them for about 5 years straight, and I had seen maybe 4 different doctors, and none of them helped me, but instead gave me painkillers and sent me home. I was now 18 and weighed 48 kilograms, or roughly 108 pounds, and still having severe headaches, so I went to see the new doctor in town, as it was a small town. We got new doctors sometimes. He had suggested maybe getting a CT scan, which scared the S out of my mom, but I really didn't know what that meant or what to expect. So we fly to the city, which is an 18-hour drive or 1-ish hour flight. We got the CT scan, effing loud machine. When we met with the doctor, he said that I had a growth in my brain, which made my mom start to cry. And I kind of just sat and really didn't say anything. And the doctor started making phone calls to surgeon, which upset my mom even more. Fast forward maybe 2 weeks. It was no longer referred to as a growth, but after another CT, they said the type of tumor was a non-cancerous one, which was amazing news. Probably the best news we had. But it was a pituitary gland brain tumor, which wasn't good. The pituitary gland controls a lot of hormones and a lot of other important things in the body. So I'm getting ready to have surgery, and I'm not really nervous, more kind of excited to get it out, but of course, things could go wrong. The pituitary gland is also attached to the optic nerve, which is connected to my eyes. So it turned out I had lost part of my eyesight over the past few years, but it was so slow, I didn't actually notice. So the old way they would do the surgery is they would crack open the skull and do it that way. But they had a new way of doing the surgery, which is to go through the nasal cavity, up to the skull, drill a hole through the skull, remove the tumor, and then would take a skin graft of some tissue and cartilage from inside the nose and would make a wall to cover up the hole. And because of the new way they do this surgery, they have a higher chance of removing all of the tumor and not having to go back and remove more. There was always a chance because of where mine was that obviously I could receive brain damage or go blind or, worst case, die. When I woke up, I was so effing high on morphine. I was seeing triple everything because my optic nerve had been stretched from the tumor, and I had tubes everywhere, but I could see my parents next to me and some doctors. Anyway, I pass out. A week goes by after coming in and out of my high morphine state, and I get moved to a ward block with my own room, which is like first class compared to the ICU. I sleep and watch TV for another week with my triple vision, which was horrible, but eventually it started to subside. My vision came back, but my peripherals never came back, which was in 2015, and I still haven't gotten it back to this day. But I didn't suffer any brain damage. I did have really bad damage to my pituitary gland, which could be fixed with meds that I still take and probably will for the rest of my life. I'm all good now. I take meds, but I'm healthy. I gained a bunch of weight, so I wasn't very skinny anymore, and I didn't have any more headaches, which was a weird time in my life because I had a lot of anxiety and depression for a few years. But I eventually got to a point where I wasn't so sad, but still had a lot of anxiety every time I got a headache or something didn't feel right. But I'm getting better at dealing with it. This is the first time I ever told anyone about it, but I'm bored, so here it is. I hope you liked it.
Hi, I'm Emma, and I live in a small city where people are not too much because I love to live a low-key life, and I so much love keeping to myself. My parents complained several times about this type of attitude that I've cultivated, but that's just me. So as time goes on, they have to take me for who I am. So they already know the type of girl I am, so they always let me be at all time. I'm so much quiet and reserved. I'm not the type of person who likes games or do too much on the daily activities, but I like reading novels and watching a lot of movies, especially comedy movies. Because since I already choose to keep to myself, I have to find a means of catching fun by myself. I attend a high school class where students have the choice to do what they like and want. Whenever I'm in class, I'm always reserved and quiet, always. But I do have friends who always love to force words out of my mouth whenever they are around me. I love going to school every day, if not for anything but for the sake of seeing my friends, because I will surely talk whenever I'm around them. On this beautiful morning when I got to class, I noticed a letter was dropped inside my locker, which was so unusual. I decided to open the letter after the class, but while the teacher was in class teaching, all my mind was on was the letter that was dropped inside my locker. Immediately when the teacher left the class, I opened it, and what I discovered was a love letter, which I did not know who dropped it there. I tried to pay so much attention to every guy I came in contact with in class so as to get who dropped the letter, but it was not too available. After a long period of staying in class during the break hour, my friends came to my seat to meet me, and then they all said we should go outside to get something. On our way out, some guys came our way, and trying to get our attention at first, I looked at all of them, thinking maybe it might be one of them that cultivated the habit of dropping the sticky note inside my locker. But with all their facial expressions, I don't think any of them can do such. They tried stopping us, not moving any step out of there, and all we just have to do is to comply. But all of a sudden, a teacher decided to come our way. Then immediately they noticed that the teacher was coming our way. They all left instantly, and we proceeded in getting what we wanted to go by. I told my friends about the sticky note I discovered inside my locker that morning, and they all laughed at me, saying maybe a guy has been stalking me all this while. They then said that one of us should try coming to school very early so that the guy can be caught. But that guy that dropped the sticky note is just too smart and expert. We tried for days, but we could not get the guy. So I told the ladies to forget the issue, that I'm very sure that one day he will surely reveal his identity. As time goes on, it became a regular routine. Every blessed morning when I get to my seat, I will surely find a sticky note with a love quote inside my locker. At some point, I got annoyed and frustrated, but there's no point yelling because I did not know who was doing such a thing. So I decided to stomach it, and I did not tell it to anyone. One day during school hour, a teacher at school was explaining to us a physics experiment, and he made it as a game because he wanted all the students to participate and be carried along. During this process, all students participating closed their eyes and tasted, perceived, and some liquids to tell what it is based on their taste. It was quite fun because all students were carried along for the first time at school, and we all laughed where someone guessed wrong because we all gave various answers, knowing fully well that our tasting boards are different. I really enjoyed the class that day because it was so much different. The following day in class was Friday, so a group of people in class came together and discussed that we should have a get-together party on Saturday, which is the following day. So they asked the whole class about their opinion concerning the party. To my surprise, everyone was happy to hear that they all turned in. Well, as for me, having a get-together party on Saturday, though the plan was a little bit awkward to me because I don't really like associating myself with things like that because I so much love keeping to myself. A venue was picked, and all plan was so fascinating and lovely. Actually, I love the plan because I want to see how it will look for the first time by the beach side, so I decided to hang out that day. When I got home that day, I told my mom about the plan of going to the beach the following day. She was so happy to hear that because she's never seen me going out before. So that night, my mom came into my room and went directly to my wardrobe to select the clothes I will be putting on the following day. When it comes to selecting clothes for an event, my mom is very good at it, and she so much loves me looking good and cute, always. So the day finally came. I woke up so late, maybe because I slept late checking out the clothes my mom was picking for me to wear. I had to rush to the bathroom to have my bath so as to dress up to meet with the event, knowing fully well that I'm late already. After having my bath, I dressed up, looking cute and pretty for the event. After dressing up, I set out for the party immediately. So finally, I got to the venue a little bit late. And trust me, just as planned, all eyes were on me, because I was so much looking gorgeous and pretty. After getting there, a guy named Sean in my class ran towards me to give me a long hug and a peck. After he did that, I was so shy to take a step away from where I was standing. But from the look of things, he's been a long-time crush. Throughout the party, Sean was all over me, because that will be the first time he will have the opportunity of talking to me and expressing himself. We both have a walk together, and he told me a lot of things about me which I was so surprised to hear. Then I knew he has been the guy stalking me. Actually, Sean has been the guy dropping all those sticky notes with love quotes under my locker. At first, when he told me he was the one, I was so mad with him. Then I told him that he's a coward. If not, he would have come to me himself and not by note. Then he said he did not know what I was going to say because he did not want to be too forward. Then we both smiled and laughed together. Then we moved on with the party. We hung out and made a walk through a beach and had fun, and then we all decided to go to a friend's apartment, so a small group of us went into the apartment, and here comes the idea to play a blind taste game, similarly with a game we once played at school. I was so anxious to play the game, but at the same time, I didn't want to join. I simply refused, but then I thought of it that I am the one who is really good in tasting things and smell very good, so I later decided to participate in the end. So as usual, the game started and was getting more interesting and fun, but still yet throughout this period, Sean did not leave my side for once. Well, he might be thinking he might not have this type of opportunity again. So everyone's turn during the game came and went, and here it comes my turn. So a guy closed my eyes and pushed my head towards the object. So I tried to perceive the object. I was not getting it. Then I tried touching it with my nose. At first it was a strong object as I touched it with my nose a bit and said, "It's a pen," as it does not smell at all. They all smiled. And then I was wondering what could it be. I then gave another try, but the object this time was softer. I was then surprised, thinking within me, maybe the object has been changed. But then I asked if they changed the object, and changing the object is outside of game rules. They all said no, that it's still the same object, and I thought, what could it be? But I had no answer. After a little moment of thinking, I grabbed the object with my hand to know what the shape of the object looks like. Then I feel it was a tall object, similar to cylinder, and I immediately opened my eyes. I was so much afraid because it is something inappropriate. When I opened my eyes, what I saw was simply a banana, which was so different to what I felt when my eyes were closed and everyone was laughing at me. I was annoyed, and only Sean could notice it then. He came to walk me home. He explained to me that it was a banana, but still yet, I disagree. I just told him to close the discussion. When I got back home, I greeted my mom with a weird look on my face. Then I went straight to my room. She gave me some minutes to be by myself before she came to meet me. Then she asked me what happened at the party. Then I narrated everything to her, not leaving behind the aspect where Sean came to give me a long hug and a peck. She told me not to be annoyed about the game, though I have forgotten about how I felt during the game period because the thought of Sean is now all over me. So Mom asked me to gist her about Sean. So I did, and we all laughed and I was happy all through the night. When I got back to school, I discovered that I did not see the sticky note as usual. Then I looked straight down to Sean's seat, and then I saw him smiling. Then I laughed as feel. So the class started and immediately the teacher came in. Then every other student told the teacher about everything that happened to me at the party, and they laughed. But then the teacher said to me, he will call me one day and tell me a secret behind this game. Then he left the class, but within me I am still not sure if the object was banana at first, or they changed the object during the game, as it softened and changed, and I am still confused, and I will never play that game again. This is the reason why I didn't want to participate in the game earlier. See what it all turns out to be? Please let me know in the comments if you think they've changed the object, or am I just thinking wrong?
Gorgeous girl. Junior, 17 years old. Math. Third hour. I walk into my new class like I did for all my new classes. Nothing special, but I was lucky enough to get 5 to 6 of my friends sitting around me. Most of that class was spent playing video games on our laptops because our teacher was just awful at teaching. Almost as if he tried to teach assuming that the class already knew the material. Like what? How are we supposed to know how to do the problem if you've only shown one example and had already erased it? Ugh, he sucked. I could write a whole post about only him, but I have to stay on track because it's about to get interesting. This class was full of a whole range of students, so I'd probably say there were 4 groups that would stick together and talk. The room was kind of separated in quadrants. Our group was in the back far corner and consisted of jocks, a few gamers, and not to sound self-centered, but I would say more quote-unquote popular kids. Not that it matters much, but, well, actually, yeah, that's kind of important, so remember that. To our left were a few of the rednecks and louder kids, but just between each other so they didn't disrupt class or anything. In front of us were kids that were pretty quiet and focused more on math than talking. And finally, in front of us were this group of girls who were all kind of feminists with a few super feminists. When I say super feminist, I mean 2 of them literally said they hate men and white people, so I don't know what else to tell you. These girls were all pretty cool, besides when it came to the political stuff. But I wouldn't say we were really friends with these girls. Well, I guess most of them. There was this one girl who I'll call R that sat right in front of me. R was absolutely gorgeous, so me being me, I would often ask her for a pencil or a question so I could talk to her. She didn't seem to be as enthusiastic about me as I was about her, but I thought maybe I wasn't on my game or something. I was 17. Give me a break. We were also in totally different cliques, so we didn't know each other very well. I had heard things about her and obviously knew her name, but that was pretty much it. Everyone said she was really nice and sweet, and man, did she live up to it. The days went on, but this little thing never grew past classmates. R was just the girl that sat in front of me. Every day I'd go to class, maybe say hello, find my seat, and that'd be it. She wasn't any more than an acquaintance, and that was fine with me. One day I came into class, and sitting in my seat was this girl who I hated, and immediately started arguing with me about political stuff. What was the argument about, you ask? Not important. The thing was, though, that this little back and forth turned into a 5 versus 1 when all her friends joined in. Unfortunately, I was the only one in my friend group in my class that day, so I was getting cornered fast. Even my math teacher was getting into it. As tensions rose, so did the emotions. The argument was growing uncontrollably and eventually veered off into a path that had a lot to do with depression and anxiety. This topic was super sensitive for me because I was on medication and hadn't told anyone about it. I'd like to say that at most 3 people knew and swore never to tell. I did a pretty good job of hiding it, so when they started talking to me about the subject like I was some ignorant a-hole, I got pretty upset. This is the moment that R started talking and was being super defensive, and she seemed really knowledgeable of the subject. That didn't change the fact that we were just going off at each other. Gosh darn, that girl really ticked me off. She made everything I said seem like I didn't care about people on medication. Eventually, the argument led to me saying something along the lines of, "You shouldn't have to depend on pills. They should just help your bettering process." R took it as something completely different, thinking I said, if you take pills, then you aren't really you. She took it really, really hard and called me some names and broke down crying. Stunned, I stopped myself from saying too much more because it took me back so much. I'd never seen R so full of emotion, so I knew maybe I hit a little too close to home for her. I've made girls upset before, but not like that. The arguing stopped pretty soon after, and soon the bell rang. Everyone got up and simply went to their next class. On to something else like nothing had ever happened, but not for me. I was feeling weird about the whole situation for the day and couldn't even really sleep. Is she depressed too? I asked myself. I never met anyone else who struggled with what I did. The next day, I woke up with it on my mind, so I knew I had to fix the little mess I made. When I came to class the next day, something was different. The seat in front of me was now empty. R had requested to change seats so I could no longer just tap her shoulder like I used to. This little variable was enough for me to leave it alone. I figured if she couldn't even sit by me, then she sure as hell doesn't want to talk to me. This continued for like 2 weeks before I couldn't stand it anymore and finally decided to message her about it. The weird thing was, when I asked her about it, she said she didn't even remember the argument. I'm not the brightest, but I know you don't just forget a moment with a heightened emotion like that. I wanted to press, but instead, I told her to forget about it. Things weren't ever the same with us, and we were left instead with this awkward, hate-filled aura that floated around us when we were around each other. I figured that was all it was ever going to be. Or so I thought. Fast forward to the start of senior year, the very first day. I was pretty excited and ready for all my new classes. Each class was filled with more and more of my friends all the way up to my last class, foods/nutrition. It was 2 hours long. As I waddled in a little late, and in front of me were only a few tables to sit at, 3 of the 5 of them were completely full and had a few people I knew, so I was kind of screwed. I looked to my left. There sat 2 super weird kids I did not get along with. Guess that's not an option. I looked right towards the last table and see 2 girls I don't really know, so I start heading that way. But at the last second, I had noticed I must not have seen the third person at the table. It was R. Immediately, I turned around, thinking there's no way in hell I'm going to sit by her. Realizing the other table was possibly the worst seat in the history of the world, I looked down, sighed, turned, and sat down at R's table. You could actually feel the uncomfortableness as we made eye contact and both looked down. That's exactly my luck to be put in the situation. Then guess what? The teacher tells us that we'd better like our seats because they are permanent. Wow. We were both unhappy, but there was nothing to be done. All there was to do was to suck it up and get over it. As days went past, our little frizz sort of died out a little. We definitely still hated each other, but started talking again. We were at the same kitchen for cooking too, so we didn't really have a choice. Our conversations eventually grew more and more until one day something happened that changed everything. Our class often had times to go on your computer and do things like a worksheet or something. While I worked, I always had music playing in my headphones. Always. I didn't listen to what everyone else did though, and it kind of sucked. Actually, no. It really sucked. Listening to punk rock music wasn't really common. I liked bands like With Confidence, Sleeping with Sirens, All Time Low, and a few others. It was hard finding music like that when no one I knew actually liked it. I mean, there were songs that I would show my friends and they'd end up liking it, but never felt like someone actually had the same taste in music as me. I'm a hopeless romantic, so don't cringe when I say I've always dreamed of meeting that girl that likes my music and is, like sort of a badass and just understood exactly what that kind of music does to you. But let's push that thought aside. It was just some backstory for what's coming up. I had to start a new paragraph because thinking about it just gave me the chills. Sorry, I'm writing this trying to get all that stuff that goes through my brain. I don't know why I tell stories like this, but if you've made it this far, then maybe it's not too bad. Nothing was out of the ordinary on that day. It was boring and just kind of, there. 2 hours left is all I could think. I was already sick of school and each day was getting worse. Teacher says to us that we have free time to work on homework, so I pull out my computer and immediately grab my headphones. The homework was table-based, so we had to work together, and at this point, R being at the table didn't bother me much, so I decided to ask her for help. She looked a little confused. We didn't really talk at this point, but still. She helped me anyways. A few minutes in, I noticed she had headphones in too. I hesitated and asked her what she was listening to. She almost hesitated too, seeming embarrassed. I smiled a little smile, and she was like, "Well, they aren't that popular, so you might not know any of their songs." I peeked over and took a look at the screen. It might sound stupid and not that big of a deal, but seeing her playlist and knowing almost all of the songs, I could not believe it. I looked at her and I was like, "What? You know these bands?" Her eyes locked with mine and she said, "You know these bands?" I don't even know how to put it into words. It was like lightning. The rest of that class, we showed each other song after song after song, talking about them and pointing out the best parts only pushed us deeper and deeper into our own little bubble. We had been so lost in each other that sure enough, the bell goes off and we didn't even notice. We were both taken a little off guard, so we just sort of hurried and went home. I couldn't even sleep that night because the rest of my night, she was all I could think about. I mean, where can I even start? This girl drove me crazy all this time, and all of a sudden, this? I eventually fell asleep, and all I remember the next day is being crazy nervous. What if I tried to talk and she didn't care anymore? I guess I didn't mind much since we didn't really like each other, but as soon as I got there, it picked up just where we'd left off. R said something to me though that I'd never forget. Once we got back into music, she had this frustrated look on her face when I showed her a new song. Apparently, she'd already heard the song and really liked it. Then out of nowhere, she goes, "Ugh, why does it have to be you that likes all this music?" At that moment, I knew she was thinking the exact same thing I was. I had a dumb smile on my face for so long after that. Each day got more and more interesting. I learned that she used to think that I was a major a-hole who only cared about myself, and I told her I thought she was a B, so it actually worked out kind of well. Every time she opened her mouth, it was like angelic music I couldn't get away from. Whether we were sharing headphones to hear new music, or even just nonstop laughing about something dumb in the kitchen, there wasn't a single dull moment with her. It even got to the point where I actually wanted to go to school in the morning. The days where she was absent felt so empty to me. It was so disappointing, and I think the other girls even noticed it too. I always wondered if she felt the same way when I was gone. There's no way a girl like that would think of me like that, I thought to myself. I kept asking myself this until I learned that I was taking a class trip and was going to be gone for a few days. The day before the trip, I said to my table that I'd be gone for 2 days, and R immediately had a face of just, I don't know really, sadness? It was so genuine, and she was like, what? No, but tried to play it off right away after. I smiled at her, and she looked back, and it was like we could read each other's minds. From that point on, I knew we were both in the situation of being drawn to each other with nothing that we could do about it. I never officially said it, but I had the biggest crush on this girl, and I think she had one on me too. There was only one thing that was keeping us apart, something that was way more than enough for either of us to act on. She had a boyfriend. She started dating him in the summer, and they were pretty in love. This guy had been her first everything, so I knew it wasn't some random schlub. Honestly, the guy was kind of a D to her. He'd come to class, pull her shirt up if her cleavage was showing, and just sort of talk down to her. You could see it in her eyes when he hurt her, and it was hard to watch sometimes. I wanted to try to comfort her, but I knew it was pointless. I think he caught on to me and her talking and would stand in between us, even halfway through our conversation, so we'd have to stop. I tried to say as much as I could to her before he'd come to her at the end of class. He was usually the end to our fun every day, but I didn't mind. Even talking with her for a minute made my day. Remember how I said R was really sweet? Well, she was, but she had a side to her I never knew about. Our teacher sometimes played favorites and would let some kids on their phones and others not. On this day, she decided that R was the one to not be on her phone. In less than a second, R had this fire in her that I could almost feel just by looking at her. She snapped back and they got into an argument that lasted only a few words. Those arguments started occurring often, and to be completely real, they made me like her even more. I'd argue with a teacher or two if I knew they were being unfair, and apparently she did too. I don't think I've even told her that I liked it, which sucks, but there's not much I can do now. As the semester drew to an end, I realized things with this girl would never turn into anything. I had gotten a girlfriend, her boyfriend and her had gotten even closer, and we weren't going to see each other in class anymore. The days that we had were incredible, but at the same time so depressing because we both knew that it was going to end. I don't know how we both knew, but somehow we did. As we said our goodbyes, I'd always hoped maybe it wasn't our last goodbye, that maybe once, just once, we'd be able to talk again. I haven't talked to her since, and it's been about 3 years. Although we didn't talk, I never lost hope. I saw her at a party about a year after, but we didn't talk to each other. I looked up to see if she was looking at me a few times, but she never was, so I didn't think to approach her. As a hopeless romantic, I thought to myself, maybe it was like one of those movie scenes where I look up, and as I look away, she looks, and we never get to have the connection I was dying for. That R wants just as bad as me to look. I wish I knew the answer to that, but I don't know if I ever will. I still listen to the songs she showed me and wonder if she listens to mine. I'm left sitting here with this empty feeling, and I don't know what to do with it. I guess that's why I went to Reddit to let go of my thoughts and quit bottling everything up. So yeah, that's basically my story. A guy and a girl who hated each other, that never thought they'd end up being friends. I know it doesn't have a happy ending, but not every story is a fairy tale. Maybe one day, but not today. I wish today. She made my heart melt in a way I'll never forget. And that's enough for me.